Everyone got quiet a minute early. All right. I will call to order the Board of Trustees meeting. We'll begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Chief Duarte to lead us today.
Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for God.
Thank you. We will begin with roll call.
Trustee Kramer.
Present.
Trustee Jay.
Present.
Trustee Rose is absent today. Trustee Giannoli.
Here.
Trustee Carey.
Here.
And Trustee Chaplin, I don't see on Zoom yet. Trustee Cunningham.
Here.
Trustee Safraza.
Here.
And Trustee Sperber.
Here.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, public comment. Is there any public comment today?
Yes, we do have one public comment.
Please. Keith.
Your turn.
It's your form, please.
Yeah, I'm here representing the Police Supervisors Association, and this is Officer Hutchinson, who's representing the Police Officers Association. We're basically just acknowledging today our appreciation to this board for bringing us Darren Griffin once again. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to meet with you folks. Last time was during the tour of our station. This time I just want to give again a hand of gratitude for bringing to us Mr. Griffin, as he's appointed Mr. Chris Jensen as our COPSO. Since we've had Chris overseeing us, what he has done for our agency, not just in morale, but in forward thinking and progress, has just been incredible. And this is the first opportunity I've had where I wanted to address him publicly on behalf of our association, that Mr. Jensen has done an incredible job supporting us, and his forward thinking and his visions in both training and bringing public safety forward has just been incredible. And I want to thank you people, Mr. Griffin, for bringing us Mr. Jensen and everything that Mr. Jensen's done for us. Every day is a breath of fresh air. It is a new police station downstairs. We have a new chief. And both unions are we're just elated. And it just seems like every day we look forward to tomorrow. So thank you very much to the board. Mr. Griffin, thank you so much. And Mr. Jensen, you really do. You make it a breath of fresh air downstairs. We're constantly moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any public comment on the phone?
No public comment on the phone. I just want to mention that Carol Chaplin has now joined the Zoom.
Thank you. That is noted in the minutes. All right, moving on. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Move to accept agenda as presented, Richard J.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes. We'll begin with the minutes for the July 14th, 2022 regular board meeting. This one was one that we had pulled from the last agenda, just as a reminder for everybody to make some corrections to the minutes. Is there a motion to approve this item?
Move to approve.
Moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Item 4.2, approval of the August 11th, 2022 board meeting minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Don't care. We don't care.
As you all know, I appreciate expediency, so thank you.
Exactly. So do I.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 5, board member reports and updates. Are there any board member reports or updates at this time?
Just Mr. Chair, usually our CEO and you guys set the agenda, does the report before the board members. So I didn't know, Darren, I didn't know if you had a report this month that you wanted to give before.
Chair.
Please.
I am at item 7, Trustee Safraza, so I have a lengthy report
Okay.
today. Yep.
Okay. You guys switched it up.
If you're on your toes.
Yes. Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, items of special interest, and one that is quite special, the swearing in of our new police chief, Ricardo Duarte. Chief, you need me over here? Not practice, so this will be interesting here. Chief, raise your right hand. I, Ricardo Duarte,
I, Ricardo Duarte,
as the Chief of Airport Police of the Reno Tahoe Airport,
as the Chief of the Airport Police of the Reno Tahoe Airport,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of
Constitution and laws of the state of New
laws and ordinances of Washoe County
the laws and ordinances of Washoe County
and the city of Reno,
and the city of Reno,
regulations, lawful directives,
regulations and other lawful directives,
written as well as unwritten,
written as well as unwritten,
of the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority
of the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority
and this agency.
and this agency.
Partially
Faithfully, partially,
discharge the duty
discharge the duties of Airport Police,
I pledge to carry out these duties
and I pledge to carry out these duties
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
and will honor and respect
and will honor and respect
the missions, goals, purpose, and policies
the goals, purpose, and policies
of Tahoe Airport. Recognize the badge of my office
I recognize the badge of my office
as a symbol of public faith and trust,
as a symbol of public trust or faith and trust,
and I accept so long
and I accept so long
as I am true to the ethics of the police service,
as I am true to the ethics of the police service,
and make these promises solemnly,
and make these promises solemnly,
freely, and upon my honor.
freely, and upon my words. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate everybody here today. I know this is just not just for me, but for my friends and family that showed up, that came out of Nevada, that drove a long way to get to be here today. It means a lot to me. I want to thank Chair, Mr. Griffin, and Chris Jensen for this wonderful opportunity. I look forward to moving in a positive direction. I have a wonderful team that supports me, and I think that we will be successful moving forward and to continue the services that we have provided to this traveling public, the Airport Authority, our tenants, and this property. So thank you very much.
Take a photo here. If any of your family wants to come. Moving on to agenda item number 6.2, update on the Reno Tahoe Convention and Visitors Authority with Charles Harris. And I just want to begin by thanking you so much and thanking Trustee Safraza and CEO Griffin for putting this on the agenda. This is really exciting update.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Griffin, Chair, members of the board, members of the community, thank you very much for having me here this morning. I'm going to go through some slides to update what's happening at the RSCVA here. And hopefully, if technology cooperates, we'll have a little video at the end that I can be able to share as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about trends that's happening in our industry, which will allow you to understand kind of where we're at, and then I'll talk real local, what's happening here in the Reno, Sparks, Tahoe area. So if we look at the trends in terms of statistics, right now, traveling plans for the next 6 months, you see a skew right now. We are about 90% of people with travel plans in the next 6 months. People are actively looking to travel nationwide. It's down a little bit, but there are some reasons for that, and whether it's in Reno, Sparks, or whether it's nationally, we are adjusting to be able to market to those people. There's different factors that are impacting what people are doing to travel in the next 6 months. As you can see here, you've got COVID that is still somewhat involved, but really the transportation costs, nearly 50% are rating a 4 or 5 in terms of greatly impacting, and certainly financial situation is a factor when people are looking at what's happening when it comes to travel. The influence of COVID is certainly down. It's still prevalent, and we still have to be quite aware, but what's really happening right now is the financial picture is what's happening. So when it comes to concerns about the personal financial situation, take a look at where we were in July of this year. It really spiked around 31%. Inflation was up. Gas prices are up, and that certainly was causing people to take pause. Since then, we've come down a little bit. We're down to 23%, which is really the lowest since last summer, not this past summer, but last summer. So there are factors that are influencing when and what people are doing when it comes to travel as it relates to their finances. The transportation costs have also come back down. Again, July 6th, the July 4th holiday, when things were really spiking, caused more pause than we've seen. But we're back off 10% of where that was over the summer. So we've seen a little bit of change in what people are doing when it comes to travel planning. Hesitation about traveling and preventing, certainly number one is inflation. That is a constant issue nationally that we're dealing with. We're certainly still recovering from the COVID crisis and certainly marketing more domestically than we are internationally. But that cost of travel is a blip that we were not expecting that people are adjusting with. Certainly gas prices, we go back to July when people had pause, when it was skewing at about 43%. Again, back down to 27. We're in the right direction, but one of the things that we do at the RSCVA is we're monitoring both local and national trends about how and where we spend our money to help encourage people to come visit, whether it's for leisure or for meetings and conventions. Activities that planners use during their fall travel, friends and family are number one, and taking road trips are number two. And if we want to compare that year over year, it is down on almost every scale, but certainly friends and family and road trips are ranking very high on when people are traveling and what they're doing. When we look overall of how we're compared to the rest of the country, I took 2 snapshots. This is just very recently. On the left, our friends in Washington, D.C., they're seeing a boost in visitors, but overall, a full recovery remains elusive. And that's really for the entire industry. We're talking about another couple years until we're fully recovered on a national scale. Part of that is inflation, part of that's recovery, part of that is international access to coming into this country. On the right is a story from San Francisco, and they're talking about their increased visitor volume, but I want to pull out a quote from this story. And I'm going to read it very briefly. It says, "We are clearly on the road to recovery, but we still have a ways to go before we reach the pre-pandemic tourism levels. San Francisco will not see a full recovery until travelers from Asia return and business travel and group business increases," said my friend up there, Joe D'Alessandro. At the bottom, San Francisco travel's current projections indicate visitor spending will not return to pre-pandemic levels until 2024 and global visitation until 2025. That's really the trends of what's happening nationally. We're seeing increases from where we were. We still got a ways to go. Conversely, what's happening here locally, as I shift now to what's happening in our community, this last fiscal year, which closed at the end of June, we set records for tax collections, the best year we've ever had in terms of tax collections. We are seeing single digit, still lower than 19 in terms of visitation, but our ADRs in other areas helped us to really set the records that we've never seen before. So we're actually skewing better than most of the country, which is great news for this region and certainly for visitation. I want to break down really where the money goes, just to refresh people. We collect between 13 and 13.5% of taxable room revenue. And as you can see on the left-hand side, depending upon the districts, they receive different amounts. Of that, the RSCVA gets 8.625%. And then breaking that down, 2% going to debt service, we really see 6.625%, which then makes up our budget. And that's really how we are built and what we use to market and sell our region. So one of the things that we've done this last year is we went through and we finished our 5-year strategic plan, and we created a brand new strategic plan, really a 3-year plan that the board unanimously approved, and we are starting to put that in effect now for this fall. And that's a brand new plan, which I'll talk about. But with that 3-year plan, there's then a year annual plan that rolls up into that 3-year plan. And so we have specific goals in and around what we want to do in the next couple years. And with that, I'm just taking a couple pages from that. The first is really our goals make up 3 different buckets. And one is in sales and marketing. The second is in destination management. And third, destination alignment. That involves how we're selling room nights. It involves how we participate in the community and all sorts of things to make sure that we are really actively playing a role in this community. The other part is there are specific goals that come through this. So there's core KPIs that we have, there's key initiatives that we have in and around that 3-year plan, as well as that 1-year plan. And so that all rolls up, and we have reporting back to the board with key barometers to measure. One of the things that I do want to touch is the great relationship we have with the airport. I've been fortunate enough to work with Mr. Griffin since I arrived. I think we had 8 of us on a call yesterday going through different plans of what's happening in this year. We have dollars that are allocated in our annual budget to help support airlift, and our board has actually said, hey, put that money to use this year. And so we have specific goals in and around what we want to do, and it's really in conjunction with all you at the airport to help support what's happening when it comes to airlift. So thank you, Darren, for your partnership. One of the things I also want to mention is this last year, for the first time, the Smart Meetings magazine talked about some of the best DMOs in the entire country. And on the right, you can see a listing of those. I'm going to highlight some of the big ones that are mentioned in this survey. Destination DC, Miami, New York, and Boston, even Dallas, mentioned among the very best in the country. And for the very first time, the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority was named on a national level as one of the very best DMOs in the country. And that's kudos to the team for all their hard work and really recognizing all of the good things that we're doing. In terms of where we finished last year, again, we finished above our punching weight when it came to all our overall group room nights for meetings and conventions, 105% to plan, and our marketing initiatives all exceeded the expectations. Again, $457 million in taxable revenue that we collected was a record, $130 million more than we've ever done. So kudos to the team for doing some great things. Another piece I wanted to mention, and this is really important, is the accreditation process. We have a trade organization called Destinations International, and they have independent experts in our industry that review applications to become accredited. We last got accredited here in 2014, and I made that a priority that we had to meet 108 different components to submit, where there was individual folks that then evaluated where this destination sat to see if we were doing the best and the best. And at the end of June, we were accredited again for the first time since 14, so we're very proud of where we are. Some of the other things that have happened this last year are our bowling and our agreement with USBC. We had a 3-year extension that we got done thanks to the board and folks in the community with USBC. That now goes through 2032, so we've extended that for 3 more years. We also came to an agreement with Miss USA, who is here in 2019. We now have a 3-year contract to bring them here to the destination starting this fall, and it will be 2022, 23, and 24. And that's a really important agreement for us. It adds nearly 2,000 room nights per year for the event, and we get national, if not worldwide, exposure through their broadcasts through the destination, and we'll be able to highlight everything that's happening in and around Reno, Sparks, and certainly Lake Tahoe with the contestants. One of the things that we've also done is part of our 3-year strategic plan, we've updated our mission and vision for the organization so that we are up to date. And certainly, this our key in terms of our vision is to be the preferred outdoor destination when it comes to outdoor gaming, special events. this is really important for us because we want to make sure that we're authentic. Everybody in every destination is marketing and selling what they're doing. But for us, celebrating our gaming, celebrating the outdoors, and celebrating our special events really is what the core that differentiates us. If you were driving to work, you probably looked in the sky, you saw the balloons that are up there that one of the organizations that we help support. That really makes us unique. And so we want to make sure that we are true to our word when we're marketing and selling the destination. Our mission has also been updated. Attract overnight visitors to the Reno Tahoe while supporting sustainable growth to our communities. Again, driving those room nights, but making sure that we're sustainable throughout the entire process. And for the first time, we created values. We wanted to put a stake in the ground to make sure what the RSCVA stands for. And these are the 5 components that the staff helped work on to make sure that we are collaborative, that we have absolute integrity, we're transparent, we have ambition, and certainly we believe in our people to help do that. So that's certainly one of the things that we accomplished this last year as well. I mentioned it briefly, but certainly our special events are a part of what we do. It is in our mission. We fund, or we help fund 30 different events that happen here. Our board has given us direction to add additional monies for special events, and we have a subcommittee that will actually meet for the first time tomorrow to just go over the history of process. What do we do with some extra money that either we add money to our legacy events, put money into our emerging events, or really bring new events from out of the area, which certainly Board Member Savraza has been pushing for, and certainly we will consider that as part of our outlook moving forward. We also have a great event that's coming here for the 3rd time, and this is the Travel Exchange that'll be here in November. It's the 3rd time that it's coming here. And this is important because when you have trade events that are here, these are suppliers that work with folks all over the world that will then get to visit and experience our destination that then go out and sell it. And we're currently pacing 39% ahead of last year when it came to registration for both suppliers and attendees. So we're doing really well with that. With that, I'm going to play some of this, not all of it, but some of this. This is a recap of our last year, and I'll limit it so you don't have to suffer through the whole thing, and then I'll be happy to take some questions.
Industry continues to rebound, meeting professionals are experiencing an ever-increasing number of challenges.
Our convention hotels continue to offer high-quality experiences at some of the most competitive rates in the country. Plus, their stringent health and safety policies remain in place.
to stop it there because, again, it goes on for a few more minutes, but you get the idea of the work that was put in by the team. Thank you again for allowing me to come and present and update you what's happening in our world, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
First off, thank you so much again for taking the time and wonderful presentation. I think it's also a reminder how lucky we are to live here. Really appreciate it. Are there any questions from the board? Trustee Jay.
Thank you. Great job as usual. We've worked together on a few things that really, our working relationship is great. Question for you is you had a slide up there that's kind of breaking down the different districts and the tax rates and things like that. Where does Incline fall into that? And what has been the trend line and what do you see going forward for that? Because I know there's been a lot of outcry up there and things like that, but
Sure.
give a
So,
quick.
yeah, so Incline is one of the districts that is mentioned up there, and they certainly receive a percentage through the agreements that we have. Incline, their mission up there is very interesting. There's 3 different DMOs that are operating up there. We actually work with them. There's been a part of the reason that we have succeeded is through the short-term rentals and the monies that have been generated from that. What my understanding, and Carol's not here at the moment, or she's online, but certainly what they have shifted from is outward marketing to really sustainability. That goes back to our mission and vision of what we're doing, and we certainly want to support that. But what we have shifted at the RSCVA is we're not taking out a whole lot of advertising when it comes to the lake. We do some content-driven things for sure because we want to let people know, but we are not purposely advertising. The core of advertising and marketing is for Reno and Sparks. And so that's a shift for us. We certainly work with Andy and we respond to the needs of what's happening there. The content, and I'll give you an example of the content real quick. There's a great family that is very popular that Disney just signed called the Bucket List family. They've got millions and millions of people that follow this family all over the world. We've now had them here twice. We've created some content. It generates family-friendly, great content for both the lake and in Reno Sparks area. That's where we will continue to accentuate and support the lake in that manner.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Trustee Cunningham.
Hi, is your strategic plan or the annual plan on the website?
It is.
I can't find it.
Yeah,
So-
no, it was made public and it has been posted. We'll get it to you. We'll get you the proper link.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, it looks great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Safraza.
Yeah, just want to thank Charles for coming and giving the presentation. I know it's a little lengthy and we got a board meeting today, but I think it's important how the realization, I would make one suggestion on the slide on the room tax revenue, because the other portion of that room tax revenue goes to the local governments, that goes and pays for parks, all the things, different services. And so that kind of commingles with when we bring people into the airport, the economic impact, still reason why we don't have a state income tax here. Let's be real, tourism, and I think that's understated of how much revenue. One of the things just wanted to bring up, and I appreciate it because it was a big thing for the board at the RSCBA and for Charles, is that air service and how we coordinate with the airport. So I appreciate that. And just the emphasis maybe on our hubs. Denver, I know we're doing some stuff with JetBlue, but it really emphasizing on those regional markets as well, because they're bringing in folks here. And then quickly, I know we have a long agenda, but the Van Gogh, if you haven't seen that exhibit, very, very cool. We're also doing things to try and diversify what we always have. So we have a big arts. I think this is our inaugural year that starts tonight, kicking off at the convention center. And Richard, you'll like this as well, sports tourism. I think we've been looking arts, sport tourism, starting to do different things in our region that frankly haven't been emphasized in the past. But I think all those things and how we, coordinate with the airport and air service is absolutely critical. So one quick question for Charles. Are we seeing, because, and Darren, the flights, we have the pilot shortage, also flights across the country are canceling because of regional hubs placing. Are we seeing that impact our area locally and what we're trying to bring in as far as events and tourism?
Trustee Safraza, thank you. I'll address the flight piece first, and then Charles can speak to any impacts that are seen. And I would say The impacts that we see in our route network are a function of what the airlines are doing across the country. We see contraction happening with all the legacy carriers, and so we see thinning of the routes. We see more seasonality. We are caught up in that to a degree. I would say we're doing better than a lot of other similar-sized communities where the airlines are really trying to pull back because of labor shortages and high cost. So we're closely involved with the airlines trying to make sure that they continue to see the value proposition here. I would say in our recent conversations with air carriers, all of them are optimistic around our market and the growth that's happening here, the diversification of the economy, and their desire to continue building up those hubs and serving the regional markets from our airport. So long-term outlook is very positive, but we certainly have seen some contraction heading into the fall and deep winter. And Charles, I'll let you.
Yeah, and in terms of the relationship, we are all in terms of supporting that. Darren's been kind enough to invite me on visiting some of the airlines to make sure that the importance of travel and tourism is considered when it comes to that. One of the things that we created soon after I got here was a customer advisory board. So we brought in people that are experts that book business all around the country, if not the world, combined 400 years of experience. They come here once or twice a year and provide us with input of what it takes to bring future meetings and conventions. Their biggest piece of that is East Coast delivery and direct service. And so when Darren and I have been going to different airlines and talking about that, getting that East Coast lift here, whether it's Baltimore, Washington, D.C., those areas, is certainly on the agenda. We've delivered that to help make sure that that's a priority. So,
DJ.
Thank you one more time. And follow up on Jessica's comment. Hopefully and you know this too, that hopefully within the next 30 to 60 days, we'll be making some announcements as far as sports venues. So we'll be working very, very close on that one. So Jessica, thank you so much.
And quite honestly, we were very fortunate. Our sports team and certainly Shelley Fine worked for 10 years to get the Davis Cup to come here. They said for a long time that they wouldn't come here because supposedly the tennis ball bounces higher than it does at different elevations. But you know what? The U.S. swept Colombia. We hope we're going to have them back again. So, Any other questions?
And I would just like to echo my thanks of Charles and his team. We have a really fantastic partnership. We're also very excited that the RSCVA board has endorsed the Air Service Fund and putting that to use. The timing couldn't be better. The business is so volatile now, and our ability to compete on the national and international level is linked to the partnerships with RASC and the RSCVA and our ability to bring funding for marketing and to encourage airlines to serve our market. So lots of great work going on. Trustee Safraza, I also want to thank you for your advocacy for the airport on the RSCVA board. It's a really important voice, and our work together has probably never been more linked than it is right now, competing with other airports for routes and service and frequencies. So thank you both very much.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7, President CEO report.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Good morning to the board and our guests and visitors. Thank you so much for being here. I gave Ted the month off on the safety tip because I have a lot of material to cover. So I'm going to take Ted's time as well as my time. First, I want to talk about Burning Man. What an event. I had my first one, that is correct, and I had never experienced it, of course, and I saw things in the airport I can't unsee, but I really want to thank and commend our employees who did such a fantastic job working the roadway, our security forces out there, and so many vehicles coming in, so many bikes being dropped off, and just managing that kind of confusion and chaos. They did a fantastic job. And our custodial team for that airport looks as great as it always does. You don't see a difference, but boy, was it impacted. And there were mornings where it was like a dust in the air. And just really want to thank them on the front lines for doing such a great job and acknowledge what a boost that event gives to this airport. And it tens of thousands, I think 25,000 additional customers, and we saw days of numbers of enplanements that I hadn't seen, and I don't think we've seen in well over a decade here. We had one day, I think it was Tuesday, of over 8,500 people outbound here, which is a 17,000 passenger day. I mean, those are astronomical numbers, and a number of the airlines added flights for Burning Man, and it's a good thing they did because we needed all of it. The rental car lines were longer than I've ever seen, and so it's a huge economic boost to the airport and the region, and it helps me understand just how valuable it is and what an important partner they are for us and everything our team does to support it. So looking forward to seeing it in the years ahead, but a huge thank you to our team. I want to provide the board a number of public safety progress updates, things that we're working on right now, and also report out first on a meeting I attended on August 22nd, requested from Reno Mayor Sheevy. I was joined by our chair and our vice chair and Chief Ops and Public Safety Officer Chris Jensen, along with members of Local 731, Dan Tapia and Casey McCone. Mike Brown joined us, and members of the city staff. We had a really great conversation on a number of areas of interest for the city of Reno. First and foremost was a concern that was raised by 731 around our lack of inspection for our non-aviation buildings. We adopted the fire code a couple years ago, the International Fire Code. We had not yet stood up our periodic inspection schedule for the non-aviation buildings. We have been inspecting the aviation buildings. So they raised a very legitimate concern around not knowing what's inside those buildings, and we certainly agreed with them. And in that meeting, the city of Reno Fire Chief Cochran agreed to provide the fire marshal services through an interlocal agreement that would allow those buildings to be inspected. Very appreciative of that. We're working on drafting that interlocal agreement already. Chris Jensen is on the lead on that, and we should get that put together pretty quickly and get those buildings inspected. We all agree firefighters, first responders should know what they're stepping into before they get there, and that's very important. We also talked about the airport's position on auto aid off airport with our firefighters and why that is not something that we have been in support of, and all the reasons why. A good conversation there and education. And then lastly, talked about third-party contracting for fire services at the airport and the city of Reno's interest and whether we would be willing to explore that. I'm expecting a letter from the city to kind of formalize some of these topics, and then I will bring that to the board for further direction and action as we get to that point. Mostly, I want to thank Mayor Sheevy for her leadership in the meeting. The best way to resolve issues, areas of concern, areas of mutual interest, you name it, is to get together, have an open and honest conversation, put it all out there, and work yourself towards some solutions. And this meeting was certainly that. And so I'm very appreciative of her leadership and look forward to the continuing dialogue and working through those issues. Related to that, 2 days later, on August 24th, the Reno City Council approved the interlocal agreement with the Airport Authority and the City of Reno for them to take over our PSAP, or 911 center. So this is something we've been talking about with the board for a number of months. This was kind of the last big milestone to make that happen. We've been already planning for it for a number of months now, and we've contracted with former Chief Mike Brown to lead our transition into the City of Reno PSAP, which you really can't over-explain how complicated it really is and will be. And so there's 1,000 details to be worked through, and we are very confident that Mike will be able to do that for us. I'm very grateful for the City Council approving that interlocal agreement. This is going to allow us to provide the highest level of customer service on our fire and EMS calls. And it's something that I think has been talked about at the airport for maybe 20 years. And thank you to Chris Jensen for pushing it across the finish line and getting us there. And we will keep the board apprised of our progress on the PSAP transition. I want to provide some updates on our staffing and equipment investments that we've talked about through our budgeting processes. On the staffing front, the board will remember, I think, that in the FY 21-22 budget, we approved the addition of 3 new battalion chiefs, something that had been talked about for a number of years. We swore them in a few months ago. They are all 3 on the job, leading their shifts, doing an absolutely fantastic job of leadership. I want to publicly thank Chiefs Inglesby, Holbrook, and Whitlock for the job they're doing, leading each shift. We'd never had battalion chiefs here, and it just adds a layer and a depth of leadership that we see an immediate difference. And I just continue to hear great things about our BCs. We also approved in this year's FY 22-23 budget the addition of 3 new shift captains and 3 new driver operators through promotion. So this was a request that came through to, add depth to the leadership levels inside the fire department and on each responding crash truck. So through promotion, 6 promotions will happen, and that really provides an incredible opportunity for the existing 15 firefighters to compete for those promotions, and really adds a lot of opportunity by increasing the leadership level for each responding piece of equipment, provides a career progression for our firefighters that has not existed, additional training opportunities for each of them as they advance in the promotion process, and leadership experience, which is so important when building succession planning, when trying to get the next generation ready to lead. These promotions will provide all of those opportunities. The promotion testing process, interviews, and other elements, it's complicated, it's rigorous. It takes a number of people to do that. Will begin in early 2023. And that'll include support from other leaders, from other first responder agencies to help us facilitate that. So that is really exciting. And on the promotion front, also want to call out that our police department is also preparing a promotion process to backfill the sergeant position vacated by our new chief, Ricardo Duarte. So a great opportunity for one of our police officers to be promoted to the sergeant ranks, which is such a critically important level of leadership, and they do a fantastic job here. So that's exciting. Finally, on the personnel front, in our recent collective bargaining negotiation with Airport Fire, the Reno Airport Firefighters Association strongly advocated for additional staffing on each shift. And through the process of that negotiation, we agreed with them and committed to adding 3 additional firefighters in the FY 23-24 budget. So that budgeting process begins in December. We will begin the recruitment process for those 3 additional firefighters in the springtime, with the goal of when we start that budget on July 1st, 2023, we will have an additional firefighter on each shift ready to go at that point. That brings us to 7 firefighters per shift and a battalion chief per shift. So continuing to improve our positioning for our response and the staffing levels. On the equipment side, we continue to push hard for newer and better equipment for all of our first responders. We've talked about this for a number of months, and in this environment, I think this board knows how difficult it is to actually buy things, and that has been a challenge. But we are getting close now on our refurbished crash truck, ARF apparatus. Lori's got a picture of it there. This one we expect to see here in October, so not too far off now. This one is in South Carolina, completely gutted and re-put together, modernized with all new equipment. And as this gets close, we will send a battalion chief and mechanic out to South Carolina to kind of give it that once over, take a look, make sure we're getting what we paid for, and then they will ship it to us. And this will replace an ARF truck that is probably 20 years old, still on the front line service, way beyond its useful life. In addition to this one, we are also awaiting in February 2023 the arrival of our new Rosenbauer 1500 ARF apparatus, which we don't have a picture of because it's still being constructed, but that was a brand new crash truck that was a source of debate with the FAA, I think, for 7+ years. And we finally got to the finish line under Chris's leadership and purchased that, and that is being constructed right now. This will be the first brand new ARF apparatus in 8 years for this airport fire department, which is too long, and that won't happen again. But in just a few short months, we will have an entirely new frontline equipment, which is really exciting, and I'm proud of our team for achieving that. In addition to this, we now have a Wildland Type 3 vehicle that we received for free, which is always great from the Nevada Division of Forestry. There it is. We have not had this capability in the past. This is a wildland rig that will support both of our airports or in a mutual aid capacity. Obviously, wildland fires are a source of intense concern, and we're all experiencing them every summer, which seems to get longer, and our ability to protect our land, the property that we own, and help those around us is really important. So very appreciative to the Nevada Division of Forestry. We joined their protection program under the advice of Mike Brown, and it's already paying dividends. On the police side, we talked about police cruisers. I feel like since we got here, we were finally have them online, on duty, the Dodge cruisers there with the pursuit package. It took a long time to get here. It took a long time to equip them, but it's great to finally have these police vehicles online. Again, we were late in planning for replacing vehicles here. I think the ones that they were driving were 8 years old, which is several years too long for any frontline first responder vehicle in the police forces. And so we won't let that happen again either. Lastly, I want to thank our emergency manager, Tracy Moore, was able to solicit bleeding control kits and quick evacuation medical sleds from the Inter-Hospital Coordinating Council. And this is critical equipment for police officers essentially in the hot zone, to be able to provide life-saving first aid to fellow officers or civilians in an incident before the EMTs arrive or before they can be allowed in once the site has been secured. This is standard equipment now for first responders, for police agencies. The Inter-Hospital Coordinating Council receives federal grant funding just for this purpose. So great that we, for the first time, are able to equip our team as agencies are equipped around the region and the country, and we're excited for them to have that equipment. So a couple other items for the board, the air races. Next week, they got here. I know it was a journey to get here, unsure of whether they were going to be able to meet the insurance requirements. They did, and we are excited for the event. I'm not sure the board recalls, but last year our airport fire team took lead agency responsibility for the air races, and so we are on point for leading the public safety response to any incident at that airport. So our battalion chiefs are already leading our effort, getting ready for that, working with the air races public safety team. They have an entire team of their own. But our team is on point and we'll be ready to go, hopefully, for a great event. No demonstration teams this year, Blue Angels, the Thunder from the Air Force, none of that this year. So it's just the racing. And also, sad to report, earlier this week, one of the primary racers in the unlimited class died in a accident practicing for the event. So unfortunately, a stark reminder of why insurance is such an important issue here. It is dangerous what they do out there, and public safety is paramount from the airport owner's perspective, which is how we look at this. Our Part 139 inspection starts the day after the air races end, and so our team is getting ready for the very rigorous shakedown of having our certification inspector come, and you know, they do a great job of putting us through the paces, thoroughly inspecting the airfield, checking our records, our wildlife program. They test our ARF response to a simulated event on the airfield. They really they look at you day and night. They're looking at lighting, signage, marking, the pavement. We were really tested against every other airport and the FAA standard to make sure that we are meeting that standard, and it takes weeks and or months to get ready for that. And so I want to express my thanks to our team in advance of the inspection. They're working very hard to make our airport look great, but it looks great all the time, and we welcome the inspection, we welcome the process. Lastly, thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me take all this time, but a lot going on. I want to just acknowledge AHA Airlines and the tremendous amount of effort that their team put in here and the tremendous amount of effort that our team put in. It did not end the way anybody would want it to, but it wasn't from a lack of passion or dedication or really hard work of trying to make a new airline go in an environment of high cost, volatile passenger traffic, and you know, they did their best. I'm grateful to them that they proved out a few routes for us, that Spokane and Palm Springs are really strong routes, and we will be in Seattle soon to meet with Alaska to talk about that data. And there's nothing better than actual passenger data to take to an airline and say, you can make money here and you should be flying this from Reno. So we are grateful to them for that. Sad that it ended the way it did. But unfortunately, so many small airlines have gone this route. It's a high-cost business. You have to generate a lot of revenue really quickly, and unfortunately, it just didn't happen. But that concludes my remarks, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, first off, CEO Griffin, I appreciate you taking the extra time. I think we can always make time for public safety, and this conversation is a critical one for this authority and this board. And thank you for the detail on this. One question, I know in the past as we've gotten some new equipment, or new to us as far as equipment goes, from like Truckee Meadows, who was so gracious to donate a fire truck to us and equipment. The difference between that kind of equipment and this refurbished equipment that we're getting from South Carolina, as far as the usefulness of that equipment, the length that that equipment can stay inside our fleet. It sounds different, like that, you know, when you're talking about a stripped down refurbish, like I'd like to just, if you could elaborate a little bit more, comparing some of the equipment we had procured that had been used versus a fully refurbished vehicle.
Sure. Thank you for the question. And it's important to discern the difference when we get something for free from the Nevada Division of Forestry or Truckee Meadows. It's an as-is condition, and you accept it with the maintenance requirements and whatever remaining life that apparatus may have. The board may recall we purchased a Type 1 equipment that was refurbished, and now we're purchasing an ARF crash rig that was refurbished. Refurbishment is a life extension intended to modernize the equipment, extend its life beyond the normal 15 years that you would expect. Recondition parts. In fact, our ARF rig is waiting on a few new parts before it can actually be put together finally. And so in my mind, it's typically a 5-year life extension. And so we will put this ARF rig into service knowing that it's a 5-year life extension, and we need to be planning for its replacement as well, and not waiting for 5 years and then saying, now what should we do? Same with the Type 1 apparatus. We put that into service in 2021 with a 5-year life extension, and it will need to be replaced no later than 2026, right? But you want to get your investment, but you don't want to ride something too far, which unfortunately is what we've done with police cruisers and a couple of our ARF apparatus. Were really just well beyond their useful life, and there's a long lead time to buy them. There's FAA approval time, and there's budgeting process. And so we have to start well in advance, and you have my commitment that we will have a much better fleet management program, and we do already. Our team has worked hard, and we have a fleet management program that accounts for every piece of rolling stock.
I appreciate that very much. Other questions or comments from the board? Trustees Fraza.
Yeah, actually, I want to thank a few people for this, because I think our chair, Mr. Kramer, and our vice chair, Mr. J, Darren, and I think Mr. Tapia, Mr. McConey, coming to the table on this, because, I mean, as the board's aware, the dispatching issue was a big issue before our CEO came here. And quite frankly, those concerns were ignored. And so to get to this point finally where we're in agreement with the city of Reno and the inspections, I know sometimes these things can get contentious, but that needed to be brought to our attention, and I'm glad those things are getting resolved. I'm glad that meeting happened. I want to acknowledge our CEO for really putting the emphasis to listening to the concerns regarding staffing and also the equipment. I appreciate the explanation on the equipment. I mean, our employees who do this frontline work every day, I mean, they brought that, the acknowledgement of, hey, this is just kind of a Band-Aid to get us through to where we need to get the proper equipment. And I'm glad to hear our CEO say, we're not going to do that again, because that was unfortunately the past practice of where we are. And so I really appreciate the time that everyone took to get to this point, on these safety issues. And gosh, it's so good to see those police cars, Darren. And Leroy, I don't know if Leroy is still here, but I remember him calling me on the phone saying, Jessica, we haven't had police cars. If this board remembers a passionate plea at public comment. And so, Leroy, you were blowing up my phone on those police cars. And thank you for doing that. I mean, we listen to our employees. Thank you for coming down during public comment. I'm glad to see those cars finally happening. And again, Mr. Tapia, Mr. McConey, the fire department. I mean, these things sometimes they take longer than we'd like, but I'm glad to see you guys put that into fruition. And Mr. Jensen. So I know that these things are, you know, sometimes they get a little heated, but I'm glad to see all these things are getting resolved here today. So appreciate it very much.
Other comments or questions from the board? Thank you, and thank you, CEO Griffin, and thank you to our frontline team members, both on fire and police. Really grateful for what you do for this airport, and for all of our passengers as well. Moving on to item number 8, consent items. There are none. Moving on to item 9.1, board memo. I will turn this over. I believe Bryce is presenting.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Really presenting?
Yes.
Okay. Morning, everyone. Bryce Juzik, project manager for the RTA Remote Economy Parking Lot Construction Project, Phase 1. So here's the location of the Remote Economy Parking Lot Phase 1 construction area, highlighted here in blue. Went out to bid early August, and this is the first phase of a 2-phase project. Phase 2 will be in the spring of 23. The project includes about 68,000 square feet of new pavement, and it has a land swap between the RTA and Enterprise Rent-A-Car that was coordinated by our commercial business, Brad and April, dealing with Enterprise. And with that, we are going to get an additional 200 parking spaces in Phase 1 and 400 parking spaces in Phase 2. So here's the current site. You have a this is a former driveway for the old radar tower that has, as you can see, just kind of
Bryce, sorry. Speaking, it's me.
Oh.
The microphone, so it
Sorry.
turns red. Thanks.
So here you can see the Enterprise lot will be combined into one large consolidated surface lot. It was 2 separate lots. With that, and then the RTA will be getting the north and east area of their existing pavement around their maintenance building. So this has several benefits for the RTA. It provides us access off Aviation Way, which with the freeway off-ramp, about 70% of our passengers come in off that off-ramp, and gives us more direct access and a safer crossing across Aviation Way for pedestrians to get to the terminal, and avoids having us to make large street improvements on Terminal Way, which would have probably included a right-hand turn pocket and a left-hand turn pocket. So we would have been widening Terminal Way, expending a lot of our budget on that as opposed to making more parking spaces. So this worked out better for the airport as well as consolidating Enterprise's 2 surface lots, which should help their operations. Here's the area for Phase 2. You can see the red area. We're getting that in time for this holiday rush, which was a priority for our parking staff, trying to get something to weather them through this holiday season. Then we'll construct Phase 2 in the spring of 23. So we went out to bid August 4th, had a bid opening on August 16th, and advertised through the RGJ and NGEM websites. We had 2 bidders, Sierra Nevada Construction and RMAC Excavating and Paving. RMAC was our low bidder. With that, so we have the breakdown of the project budget. This includes construction for Phase 1, but the design and total budget for the 2 phases. So right now we're trending under budget and should have enough money to go with Phase 2 and construct the whole lot. We had 1 bid alternate, and that was for some costs that arose with the blue lot. We packaged those up as a bid alternate as opposed to paying for the change order, and saved a little over $30,000 by doing so. Project challenges moving forward. Supply chain is still an issue with some of the storm drain pipe, but the contractor is already working on that. And then also just paving this late in the season, cold weather becomes an issue because there's certain temperature requirements in order to pave. But with that, I think we should be fine. And looking at starting here potentially next week with board approval, and then 45 days for construction with project completion at the end of October, early November, which should historically keep us out of the snow. So that is hereby move that the board authorize the president and CEO to execute a construction contract for the remote economy parking lot construction project phase 1 at Reno Tahoe International Airport with RMAC Excavating and Paving LLC, accepting the base bid and bid alternate 1 in the amount of $1,135,043 and authorizing an owner's contingency of $75,000. Any questions?
Thank you very much. I'll open up to questions. I have two, and maybe they're both for you and CEO Griffin. Last week I was tagged in a post talking about employee parking, and a concern came up about, and I don't know if it was an employee that made the comment or just some outside person, and I sent it over to you, Darren. Can we just talk briefly about the safety that we have at these lots? Because this is going to be an employee lot, correct?
Yes, I believe this will be, its intent is for terminal employees and overflow parking. I think right now the intent for Landside is to move the terminal employees to this lot and then free up the north cargo parking where they are currently parking for customers. With that, the area does have, sorry.
That's okay.
There are existing lights out here, and with phase 2, we'll be adding 11 multi-facing cameras, so it will be well lit and have cameras, and we'll be putting up security fence in phase 2 to secure the lot. We're leaving the existing fence line here and adding new fence line for Enterprise. They'll be fenced in. Enterprise will be fenced in and keep their lot secure. But we are going to have a gap in the existing fence that we're leaving up until phase 2, just in case we need to overflow into that yellow area in the meantime this winter, if the conditions allow. But yeah, as far as fencing and lighting and cameras, we are going to include that, especially it'll be heavier in the phase 2 portion of the project.
Right. Darren, you want to make any comment on that?
Thank you, Trustee Jay, and appreciate hearing employees' concerns, and we've had a number of conversations with airport employees around the existing parking situation. All of this is designed to, 1, add capacity for our customers, and 2, improve our employee parking situation. As airports grow and get bigger, employee parking tends to move further and further from the terminal. That is always a source of friction. And if you've exited the parking plaza, you've seen 2 new vans out there with our brand, the More R&O on it. Those are employee shuttle vans, essentially, that when we move them out here, we will be providing a shuttle service so they have a safe and secure transport, or they can also walk. There will be a brand new sidewalk lighted there. As Bryce mentioned, this lot will be well camered and also regularly patrolled, as is the existing employee lot. We have our own police officers. They are regularly out there, but it's impossible to make anything 100% safe. As we all know, there are car prowls and things like that constantly happening, and you have to maintain a high vigilance. But the safety of our employees is, of course, number 1, and this will be a huge move in that direction.
Thank you. And now that Chair Kramer's back, I yield back to you. Maybe. I don't know. Might have a coup.
I don't know that we can joke about that anymore. Are there any other comments or questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9.2. Amanda.
Morning, Chair, Trustees, CEO Griffin, staff, and guests. As I wait for, there you go. Amanda Twitchell, Senior Project Manager for the Airport Authority. This morning, I'll be presenting 2 items related to the ticketing hall expansion. The first is the bid package number 2, GMP, or Guaranteed Maximum Price, with McCarthy, and that's really the majority of the construction scope and cost. And then the construction management services with Atkins, and they'll be a part of the same presentation, but 2 separate awards. So starting with a brief background of key milestones that were already awarded, RSNH began design in August of 2021. McCarthy Building Companies, or MBC, was selected as the CMAR in October of 2021. And the Air Handling 1 procurement was awarded to Mount Rose Heating and Air on July 14th, as well as bid package number 1 was awarded to MBC on July, and that was really the enabling scope and the roof replacement scope. Before all that happened, just to bring you back kind of the impetus of, why we started and what was our goal to achieve here. I think back in 2018, the RNO master plan was completed, and it identified a couple deficiencies in the ticketing hall. You can see here our messaging, the hierarchy and clarity of our signage is an issue. We have a lack of restrooms in the area. Our overflow of the queuing is an issue. We don't have enough passenger queuing right now, and then that overflows into the circulation path, which then, bogs up our circulation path. This project includes approximately 9,500 square foot expansion to the west and renovation of the existing facility. A little bit more detail on that. It includes modification of the structural steel, elevator relocation, fire riser room relocation, upgraded utilities, roof replacement, new restrooms, and new finishes. And just a reminder, the air handling unit and the roof replacement is not being awarded as a part of today. It was already awarded. So these next slides, you've seen a lot of them. They've been slightly updated, but I'm going to walk through and kind of explain how we are addressing those deficiencies and much more in this project. So this is a view that people will start to see as they drive up. This is a view of one of the portals of the doors. As I talked about in the Planning Construction Committee, this is part of our intuitive wayfinding. Right now, you see people walking into windows that they think are doors because it's not clear where you enter. And so we're really making it very, it happens. We're making it very clear where the entries are and identifying them with numbers as well so that it can associate with our new digital signage as well. You can also see we're adding a lot more glazing to, one of the unofficial goals is to make it a brighter, more open space. So we're adding a lot of glazing to let a lot of light in. And just so you know, as a part of this process for the GMP, we went through an extensive value engineering process to get the cost down. But we made sure that we hung on to things that we felt were very important to the project and cut things that we thought maybe weren't as critical. And so one of those elements is the elevator tower that I know everyone was passionate about. And so it's still going to have that lighted beacon at the top that we can change the colors on. This is a good example of where we kept something. Previously, we had been showing the existing flooring remaining there. This is an ad that, and as you saw in the memo, it's ad alternate number 1 that we decided to accept because we all felt it was really important to change all the flooring in there. An example of somewhere we cut. Previously on the renderings, we showed kind of a wood element there. It was originally on 3, kind of north, center, and south. We decided to save some money by cutting it and just leaving it on the center. Again, you'll see we're raising the ceilings, nice and bright, lots of light in, a lot more open. This is the new circulation path. Again, exposing a lot of the existing structure, kind of making it a part of the architecture. And a part of our wayfinding, obviously new signage, that's a lot more clear and direct. And then our intuitive wayfinding with the flooring kind of weaving through and weaving you toward the security checkpoint. This is an example of that wood finish there. It's on the new restrooms that we're including in the project. And in a way, it worked out to our benefit because it's, again, good wayfinding that you can direct people to the wood wall over there and they know exactly where the restrooms are. Again, showing all the additional lighting in this new circulation path. And then I thought this was a nice view because currently, if you were standing here in our current space, that's our circulation path that you'd be walking through. And so it just kind of shows you what it's going to expand to be. Currently, the wall sits right along this existing column line here. And so we're getting a lot more queuing and a lot more space to the west there. So the guaranteed maximum price, or the GMP process, started on June 6th of 2022 with McCarthy issuing invitations to bid. On July 7th, we opened the bids and I was present for all the openings. June 22nd, we received the initial GMP that we reviewed and went back and forth in that value engineering process to get the cost down. And then on August 18th, we had the final GMP that you're seeing today. So this is a breakdown here. The thing I want to note is We'll have about $1.4 million in contingency. There's a CMAR contingency and an owner contingency for all those unknowns. And the total GMP is $25,678,143,000. Background on McCarthy. They were founded in 1864. They've had a presence in Nevada since 1973. They've been ranked number 19 on the ENR Top 400 list. They are very familiar with CMAR delivery process, as 80% of their projects are delivered that way, or alternative delivery. And again, very familiar with airport projects, as they have over $3 billion of active airport projects. All right, so now onto the construction management with Atkins. So these are standard slides that we use. You know, you're very familiar with our process with Atkins. Construction management services include inspections, material testing, quality assurance, contract administration, and regulatory compliance. It's really an industry standard, and I don't have it noted on here because we're not federally funded as a part of this project, but it is a requirement of federally funded projects. Let's see. It basically helps us ebb and flow with the seasonal projects and different things so that we don't have to permanently staff for a lot of these things as well. At the beginning of the year, we award an initial amount, and then work orders are awarded after that, and we negotiate based on the specific project of what that scope is. So this is the original award of $49,000 at the beginning of the year, and we've had this will be the 6th amendment to that contract for $1,359,900 for a total of $2,062,700. So this is the total estimate at completion. All the elements above bid package 2 have already been awarded and under contract. Bid package 2 here for the $25 million, construction management for the $1.3 million. The other direct costs include things like permitting, environmental testing, the art allowance, various things like that, for a total estimate at completion of $32,745,883. And just to give you an idea of our funding sources, the majority of the project is funded through the general fund. 6% of the project is funded directly through CARES, like the roof and the air handling unit that are directly eligible for that funding. And then another 18% is going to be indirectly funded by CARES and ARPA. We're going to be using the letter of credit and then reimbursing through that. This is a high-level schedule. Right now, actually, as of yesterday, we've started phase 0. So they're creating the staging yard and working on the electrical on the curb. So that's exciting. Construction is scheduled to start early October for the major part of the construction. Run through the end of January, beginning of February of 2024. And then there will be some post work. So basically, beginning of February, the temporary walls will come down. The space will be fully occupied and functional. And then there'll be some post work that's done, kind of around the limits. So the first recommendation for bid package number 2, GMP, it is hereby moved that the board authorize the president CEO to execute a construction contract for the bid package number 2 of the Ticketing Hall expansion project at Reno Tahoe International Airport with McCarthy Building Companies, Inc., accepting the base bid and alternate 1 for the guaranteed maximum price of $25,678,143.
Thank you. And just a point of clarification for the board. We, in the presentation, went over agenda items 9.2 and 9.3. This is specifically regarding 9.2, just to make sure we're all on the same page here as to what's going on. Comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, so can we open 9.2 and 9.3 since you already did it? Okay. Just on 9.2, and I know I had brought this up last meeting, and first of all, this is so exciting. Oh my gosh, just to be part of the board and have this happen is pretty cool. But a couple things. I do think we should have a groundbreaking on this. I think it's significant, and the reason, we have to let the public know what we're doing too because of the disruption. So just a question, and thank you for the presentation. I think it's more for our CEO on the customer service and the outreach. What is the plan for that? I didn't see it in the staff report. And I'm just concerned because although it's super exciting, we're going to be redoing lots here. We're going to be, expanding the ticket hall. What's the plan for the customer service reps or the press to let people know what's happening? Because I think we got to do the extra time thing again.
Absolutely. So, and I wish Brian or Stacy were here because they could better answer that. But they are working on it's not really a groundbreaking, but they are working on a press event that we're going to be doing. And yes, they're going to be messaging, get here early. It's going to be impactful. So I believe we're also working with the airlines as well to message, when you check in, there's a lot of airlines that will message you that, there's construction, get there early, stuff like that.
Please.
So thank you, Trustee Safraza, and to tag on to the communication piece here. This is the beginning of the More R&O program, and Brian and Stacy and KPS3 have built a robust communication program centered around More R&O, and this is kind of the opening event. Both digital and signage on the mall walls that will exist throughout the complex, temporary signage, permanent signage, all of that is baked into, first and foremost, beginning with the ticketing hall expansion project. But everything that we do going forward will require a lot of communication. The public will get tired of hearing about it, I'm sure. We're already messaging 2 hours prior to departure. People should be arriving just because of the volume and the traffic level that we have right now. Whether or not we go further than that, we'll see. You can say it doesn't mean anybody will listen to it or do it, but we are looking wide-eyed at the situation. And I would also add, we are planning events on October 13th. After our next board meeting, we will have a major event to kind of memorialize the entire program. We're also, at that time, we'll certainly talk about the ticket hall. And we're also working on a media-only event to actually take them through the space and describe so they can see what are we going to do and how's it going to work, so they can really accurately describe to the customers what's going to happen at the airport, how their experience will be changed, and really get people as mentally prepared as you can for those that are listening. And that's only a certain percentage. A big percentage, their first knowledge will be when they get dropped off, and that we have to be prepared to navigate those customers as well. So we're thinking hard about this, getting ready to implement a lot of different communication techniques. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Trustees Frost, any other questions?
Yeah, I would just say I do think this one's unique, and I think a groundbreaking. I don't know how you guys are going to do it, because I just think that's important to get that out there. So, cool.
Just some questions. I've been looking at the visuals, and I'm really excited with what the architects and yourself have come up with. But is there a change in the depth between the edge of the curb and the front of the building? Is that narrower in this project?
Yes.
How much narrower is that?
We're extending, I think right now it's about 30 feet, and we're changing it to about 10 feet.
So there's 10 feet for folks to get out of their cars and get their bags?
Well, I'll clarify, at the narrowest point. So as you see I can go back to the floor plan.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's why I say we're extending approximately, come on, there's a lot of slides. We're extending approximately 20 feet, but, come on, okay, so at the tightest point here, it's 10 feet from the front to the edge of the curb.
Okay.
And then additional maybe 15 feet from the face there to there.
I appreciate that clarification. And how much wider is the internal path? But behind the counters and their queuing areas, what is the path actually widening to?
So are you saying specifically the circulation path, or?
Yes, the circulation path.
I have to remember. It's 12.6 now, and I believe it's 14 something. I'll have to get back to you on the exact dimensions.
And additional space is being provided then in the queuing area for the airlines?
Yeah, the queuing area extends the most. It's 63% increase in their queuing.
And that's important because of the staging. It gets people out of the circulation path.
Yeah, because really the circulation path we have now would likely be sufficient if we didn't constantly have queuing in it. So we increased it a little bit, but really added more to the queuing.
And then I really appreciated the use of the offsetting tile color to show the path of circulation.
I like that.
But it does appear to end right at the end of this project, and I'm just worried about the ambiguity of getting them to the TSA entrance.
Yeah, so it does swirl up here. It kind of intermixes with the existing
fish.
terrazzo by the ski statue, but after that, correct, it does stop. You know, we did talk about maybe in a future project or a standalone project, we could extend the terrazzo all the way to the checkpoint. But at this point, it does stop at the ski statue.
Appreciate all your great answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You, Trustee Jay.
Quick question, great explanation there. So we know that the queuing area will increase. Is there much of a increase for the ticketing counter and behind them?
So the scope of the project actually stops at the front of the ticket counter, so we're not touching anything behind them. But really, you know, again, so right now, this is the edge of their queuing, ticketing, whatever they want to do. So all of this is all now their space that they can really choose to do whatever they want with.
Perfect, thank you. This is exciting.
A couple questions. One, so we talk about like with the Spirit, I'm going to mess up the term of art, but the kind of flexible ticketing space. How many of these areas are going to be for flexibility of airline? How many are going to be dedicated spaces in this setup?
So right now, I believe in the near future, so right now we just have Spirit as the common use setup.
The common use,
right?
thank you.
In the near future, we will have at least another bank of common use kiosks, but I believe in the almost near future, I don't know what to call it, but all of the non-signatory airline counters will be turned into common use.
Thank you. And then one comment on McCarthy, just I think it was a very good choice. It came up when we were actually meeting with Southwest Airlines about McCarthy as an airport construction partner, and Southwest uses them on numerous projects and came very highly, very well regarded for this. So it sounds like it's a really great partnership for us here. And they're with us today. I'm not even saying it for your benefit. I'm saying it for our benefit, for the benefit of staff here. So, yes, you all have a very nice reputation. Other comments or questions?
Just one more. If we could get a presentation maybe at our next meeting on maybe the marketing and customer service plan for just all this construction, you know, at the airport, I think that would be great. Thank you.
With that, I would very happily accept a motion. Or do you have another comment, Trustee Sperber?
No, I would like to make a motion.
I think it'd be more appropriate, most appropriate, please, Trustee Sperber.
I would like to make a motion to approve this, and then I'll make a couple comments later, but let's get going on this.
Second.
And a second. Would you like to make comments now?
Yeah, I really
Please.
would, because as we're all voting on this, I've been involved with this a lot since the beginning, or selection of McCarthy, Amanda trying to figure how to put this. We did a CM at risk, this is, as you know, and as times and monies change so fast, having a great architect working with a great contractor with a great staff, you can see the difference in this project. And when I had the meeting, one of the greatest things that one of our members said during the thing said, hey, it's very easy, it's proved now. We've actually been going through this thing. The interface with the board and everybody brainstorming on it, it feels very natural of approving this, and which is a really compliment. And Darren and I sitting up there, it was a great comment for Darren and his staff. Amanda, great job. You know, we're looking at this thing as our first big project on this thing. And so it's something to remember. This delivery method with a great contractor and a great architect that we've got here really, really works in these kind of projects.
Trustee Sperber, I want to thank you on behalf of the fellow board members. You have gone above and beyond in participating and being part of this process, working very closely with staff, with CEO Griffin, and I was very proud to accept the motion from you to approve this, as you've been really instrumental in this process. With that said, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion, oh, wait, what?
No, Jessica's saying I'm the next one.
Oh, I thought you were opposing the motion. I was very confused. For the record, Trustee Sperber is a yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That's caused some confusion. The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. It's a big day. Moving on to agenda item 9.3.
All right, so, Since I already presented it, the recommendation for the CM services, it is hereby moved that the board authorize the president CEO to execute amendment number 6, ticketing hall expansion to the professional services agreement for 2022 annual construction management services for the airport capital improvement plan at Reno Tahoe International Airport with Atkins North America in the amount of $1,359,900 for a total of $2,062,700.
Move to approve.
Motion?
Richard J., second.
Second. Is there any comment on this item or questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Let's build a new ticketing hall.
Hey.
Yeah, we can clap for that. That's moving on to agenda item 9.4, concourse redevelopment. Lisa, good to see you.
Morning, everyone. Well, I hope we can keep this level of excitement because this is we're wrapping up the planning study associated with the concourse redevelopment work, which means hopefully in the next year or so we'll be talking about design and construction of these future concourses. So, for the record, Lissa Butterfield, Manager of Planning and Environmental Services. I'm here to kick off this item. We've got a whole array of speakers who are going to come up at various points to talk about this. But what we're really focused on right now is primarily the work since April when we last brought this item to you. We'll do a little bit of backtracking so that you can go through with us again the 8-month journey that we went through in order to get to a preferred alternate. The path that we took to get to this point, it's been long, it's been iterative. There's been over 15 outreach meetings with over 100 individual participants from all the major stakeholders here physically at the airport, including staff, the board, our corporate and our local airlines, as well as our tenants and our concessions. We've spent a lot of time looking at items, re-looking at them, looking at them for a third, fourth, and fifth time, and making continual improvements along the way. So Mead and Hunt team is right here. Damon as well as Brent will be going through that process. When they are done, they're going to pass the presentation to our Chief Financial Officer, Randy Carlton, who will talk to you about the financial plan that we believe can support the preferred alternate. And then I'll do a quick wrap up, pass it over to Darren for some final words. That's going to be the agenda for this item today. I will say that there are more outreach opportunities planned. Next week we have 2 more workshops with staff as well as for our airline partners and our concessions and tenants to go over the information we're presenting to you today as well as feedback you might give us. We do want your feedback today. Our eventual goal will be to bring this item back to you in October with additional refinements if needed for adoption of a preferred alternate, and then next steps to wrapping up the study so that we can get to a point where we are comfortable initiating a design process. So thank you very much, and I'm going to let Damon take over.
Morning, and again from Damon with Mead and Hunt. So glad to be here with my partner Brandon Kinsler. Good morning to all of the board, chair, director, and staff, visitors and guests. It's the same partnership that we're seeing here that has allowed us to get so far through this progress, through this program here. If you can advance the slide, or I guess I can advance the slide. Today, as Alyssa pointed out, and so appreciate that introduction, I'll hit a lot of the points that she hit as well and amplify them. We don't have an action item today, but we're hopefully positioning for an action item at your next regularly scheduled board meeting in a month. And we'll talk a bit about how we got to where we are over the last, she said 8 months, I see it as 2 years. And you may all see it as even longer. And then we'll talk, I'm very glad to have Randy's participation on the finance and then Darren's perspective on some of the recent meetings and communication with the airlines. Really giving us the confidence to bring this to you. The schedule here, and it talks about all those months. There's a lot of things grayed out. I won't be testing on any of this, but all of those grayed out areas are places that we've had touch points with your stakeholders. And that includes the airlines, that includes staff, people who work in the terminal, your concessionaires, your business partners, everyone who has a proverbial dog in the fight. And the progress that we've made here to be able to get this far in the time that we've been working for you on this specific assignment has been because And the priority that everyone here and on the other side of these walls in these halls has made of this. We've never had, as a consultant team, to wait on or explain that, look, we're not ready, we got more important things to do. It's been everyone's priority, this project, and that has allowed us to make decision, to adjust, redirect, and be here with a, which I'll get to in several slides, a recommended alternative. And so appreciate that energy around that and to being a part of this here today. This has been a process to, it came out of the master plan. It began as hiring our consultant team to identify, to help you identify the opportunity to improve, the program to meet that need to improve, to explore the options on how to do that, which is what Brent will be walking through. And most importantly, we have sought out the perspectives. We never intended that what you need is a really good consultant team and they can figure all this out for you, or just staff and the consultant team need to meet behind closed doors. It's quite the opposite. We have reached out, as Alyssa accounted for, dozens of times with hundreds of people and several contact points with this board, including some of your workshops, your off-site powwows, which have been really appreciative to get that focused time and feedback and direction. And from everyone involved through the communication, through the accommodation, have built alignment, we've built support, and we've built, I'll say, satisfaction. Everyone seems to be very much on board with where we're headed and the recommendation that will come. The evaluation criteria, that was very important on how we got this far, and we set these out early on and got buy-in from the stakeholders on these. Those 4 bullets that you see there. And there's, you know, hundreds of sub-bullets and particulars, but we've kept these in mind. Are these meeting your goals? The experience you want for your customer, the return on your investment, making your operations easier for aircraft to come in, passengers to deplane, enplane, and then get back in the air, and the ability to implement the project, which was a very big consideration in picking which alternative was the best for us. And just as a reminder, there on the bottom, the overhead view of the 2 aircraft. They're both 737s, if you say it fast enough. The smaller one was the one that your current terminal was designed for and built for over 40 years ago. And the larger one is the one that is already in the market and that we're expecting to remain in the market for the coming 40 years. Brent, why don't you go through some of the particulars? Thank you.
Thank you, Damon, and good morning. It's great to see all of you again today. I'm going to speak a little bit about the journey to where we're at today in terms of the concourse planning alternatives. Back in Q4 of last year, we embarked on studying numerous alternatives, which we narrowed it down to this myriad of only 9, which we brought to the board in January of this year. The focus was really to leverage the work done and the direction from the 2018 master plan as the springboard for these studies, focusing on 2 and 3 pier options, locations of the piers, as well as expansion, new build, and renovation alternatives. As a result of our stakeholder meetings, as well as the workshop with this group, we narrowed it down to 3 alternatives, really a singular version of a minimal build, which is really no expansion whatsoever, but only renovating what's in place very extensively. A singular version of an expansion alternative, which is the one in the middle. And then lastly, a new construction for both concourses as the third. So we developed all those, both with airlines and stakeholder feedback, as well as this board through the April and May time period. We eliminated the expansion alternative primarily because of the impact to the passenger experience during construction, as well as the complexity of trying to maintain the existing structure and some of the potential unknowns and costs associated with that. So as a result, we continue to vet and develop these 2, the minimal build and the new build alternatives. It was very evident that although the minimal build was significantly less in cost, it still didn't meet any of the R&O's stated goals for this project. However, the stakeholder feedback regarding the new build, although it did meet all of R&O's future goals between now and 2046, the perception was the increase from 23 to 24 gates was a concern. And so as a result, between June and July, we were asked to explore ways to increase the number of gates and more specifically parking positions in the context of the minimal build as a comparison. And so with the minimal build, this is reflecting 28 gates. So that's an increase over what you have today. That was achieved through the addition of these blue nubs or elbows that you see in the diagram at left, as well as reflecting the current fleet mix of 737s and regional jets. Keep in mind it did provide more parking positions, but the gates are still 50% undersized based on current design standards. With regard to the new build, additionally, there's also the elbows that you see reflected on both concourses, which allowed for more parking positions. Additionally, we're reflecting 737 MAX 10, as well as some regional jets with a mix of 16 and 12 for also 28 gates. So by and large, it was a successful conversation. However, the drawback with the expansion to the minimal build, the significant cost increases to accommodate those expansions really brought the two concepts a lot closer together than we all anticipated. So the stakeholder conversation and ultimately the recommendation was to remove the minimal build plus expansion from the conversation. So we kind of came full circle back to comparing the minimal build as well as the new build alternatives. So I'm going to speak to some of the highlights of the distinctions, which has really informed the most recent stakeholder feedback regarding these two. So with the minimal build, once again, it's primarily using the existing structure. There's no additional space whatsoever. The cost was between $250 and $275 million. Once again, the gate count does not change from today at 23. The hold room sizes are essentially half of what they need to be by current standards, so that was not going to change. The concession capacity, which was a stated R&O goal, would remain at what it is. So as the significant increase in passenger activity occurs over the next 20-something years, no ability to expand. Additionally, more, say experientially, the passenger experience, there could be new finishes and lighting, but ultimately it was not going to change whatsoever. And I'd say one of the larger considerations as well that was discussed was the impact during construction. So although the duration is less for the minimal build, it's going to be very evident for all your passengers as well as the employees across all facets during the entire period, some fairly large inconveniences. So comparing that with the new build, which is estimated between $470 and $520 million, the increase to 28 gates, so that's a 5-gate increase, accommodating modern hold rooms, which are double what you have now, poised for a future growth in that regard. Additionally, the ability to have twice as much concessions, which would certainly improve the offerings for your passengers, as well as increased revenue as well. Overall, the passenger experience will be night and day with that, the new construction. And then ultimately, because the way that the phasing for these have worked out, they're independent of the existing concourses. So effectively, the concourses can remain in operation during construction with minimal impact to not only the employees, but the passengers. So that's kind of a high-level comparison. And I'll turn it back over to Damon to speak to where we are today.
Sure. Chair, and those points from Brent really captured so well what 2 months, or excuse me, 2 years worth of work has done. And it's been a perpetual and exciting and interesting conversation. But these benefits that we are starting to see here that you just wouldn't be able to get with a minimum build, it's new construction, and that removes mystery, right? You don't know what you're going to get when you crack a wall open or you crack a ceiling tile, and that decision of leaning towards that new construction really helps there. You're able to meet your goals, and you've even got flexibility to go beyond your goals. You don't have to implement everything on day one. You can phase it to your needs, and it carries you further than we even we expect it to carry further than even the 20-year goal of it that we started with. A new build allows it very easy to incorporate the amenities that we talked about, and so many of you have fed to us. The sustainability, elements of sustainability, resiliency, technology, accessibility, the ability to people to move around. It'd be very difficult to do that with trying to modify the existing building that is there, and the new building gives that flexibility. And most importantly, such a big decision driver was the implementation. How do you keep an airport functioning while you're doing this kind of improvements to it? And this option here allows you, through a phasing here, to be, in general, you won't be down more than 25% of your gates at any point during the construction. So, there's going to be a little bit of moving around of elements, but it's not like you're cutting your capacity of your gates in half. And this new build allows that option. What we've got here is a very preliminary phasing possibility on how this can work. And there's 3 shades of color, a reddish, a greenish, and a bluish. The reddish, right now we're starting and calling phase 0. Different than Amanda explained in her phase 0, where you're dealing with the contractor. This is more about, we've called it a 0 because the passenger won't, and even a lot of the employees won't notice a difference. This is expanding the south ramp to accommodate the RON positions more, and also identifying some major utility improvements, building them before you get into the concourses themselves. And then you would begin begin construction on one of the concourses. And it's not been figured out to the nth degree. Of course, you don't have a designer or a contractor on board, but it's likely that you begin with Concourse B. And especially once you do the red construction, it allows that shift. You can start there, and then you've got a couple of years, 2.5 years of construction on a single concourse. And then at that end of that time, you can decide where we are we ready to go on to the next one? And then you would do it again. And so you're looking at a possibility of a 5-year program once you put the first shovel in the ground. And you still have a couple of years before that to align up your design, the real concepts of it, the priorities, and identify your contractor, and as Randy will allude to, your funding program. But a couple other points I want to get to before I turn it over to Randy, and this was very encouraging. At first, it was easy for the entire team, and I mean the consultants, the staff, all of us. But when the airlines pushed back, it was like, well, how come you don't like my work? And how come you're fighting us? But I think we all quickly realized that this is the way that they become our partner in this, is they say, hey, how come you didn't show this? Have you thought about this? You're right, we'll go back and look at it, and we did. And here's a list of things that they asked us to do, and we did. And every time we answered it, it got them more excited and more interested. And less stiff arm, I don't want to hear about it, more tell me more about it. This is interesting. I'm starting to become excited. And we went from people having meetings where people all had their screens turned off, and you couldn't see what they were really thinking, to enthusiastic turning it on and smiling and nodding and little symbols of high fives and all this and thumbs up and all this in the bottom, right? This is the process that we went through in the last year. And addressing all of these questions and responses is what has got here. And I'm looking forward to Darren talking after Randy about some of the headquarters meetings and reactions, which we helped everyone prepare for and have really got us to this point. And so, asked and answered. We listened. This isn't just some idea that we all came up with without the partners. We wanted the partners' participation. And here's the recommendation. You're just really positioning yourself to meet your goals, to be so much more than what we can think the future will be, to be ready for the things that we can't even plan out. And there's just so many elements about it that range from, it's got buy-in. If that's not the best reason to do it, because people rally around it. And you couple with a lot of the elements I mentioned earlier, the sustainability, resiliency, with the bill money out there, and it's going to be there for the next several years. This is an attractant to those things. Facilities that take federal money and make elements more accessible, more sustainable, more easier to travel. And that's exactly what this does. And we'll come back to this slide and some of these points later on. Let me turn it over to Randy on the finances, unless there are any particular questions that you'd like to introduce now. We're not going anywhere. Thank you.
And Brett. Good morning. My name is Randy Carlton. I'm the Chief Finance and Administration Officer. It's a pleasure being with you this morning to talk about a plan of finance for this very important project. So let me just start by saying, a plan is not just about numbers, a financial plan that is. It's also about the guiding principles that we establish that help us guide making major decisions about infrastructure and infrastructure that has long-term consequences. So that's where we started. We developed some guiding principles in our financial planning, and I call it the three-legged stool, with diversified funding sources, prudent use of debt, and the utilization of conservative assumptions. In regards to the funding sources, we're looking at our rate and charges base, so that comes from airlines and non-airline sources. We're also looking to the FAA for different funding opportunities. We know the tried and true AIP grant funding process, but we're also looking towards the FAA for bill funding in two different forms. There is the PFC revenue base that we have, where we collect $4.50 from each passenger. We were looking to the PFCs to make a significant down payment to reduce the amount that we need to borrow, as well as to leverage that future PFC revenue to pay the debt service. All in all, one of the messages that we believe is an effective message for us, for the airlines and the FAA, is that we are bringing significant skin in the game. We know already through our conversations with the regional FAA office that those applications for bill funding that bring forward funding from the airport sponsor itself are those applications that are the most attractive. And we heard that directly, and that's the plan that we intend to initiate. Prudent use of debt. Well, we have no debt. That's the good news. Those days will likely change in the near future as we embark upon this important project. We do anticipate significant debt funding for this project, and I'll show you some of those forecasts in a moment. When we talk about debt, there are goals that we've set to obtain investment-grade bond rating. That's in the B, AA, or better category. In my judgment, I believe that we're about a single A level credit, and we were going to make that case as strong as we possibly can to the rating agencies that we are a strong credit and we will obtain the lowest cost of borrowing as a result. And finally, we know that this is not the only game in town. There are other projects that we anticipate in the future, and we do not simply want to leverage all of our future debt capacity towards this project. So we have to think about that as we make these important decisions. Conservative assumptions, well, okay, so that helps us in the event that things do not materialize as planned. Plans are always subject to change. Plans are always subjected to change by circumstances beyond our control. And lastly, mindful of costs. We know that we need to offer a competitive solution to the airlines and our tenants to seek R&O in their decisions about flight destinations and flights. So CPE is an important metric of how we measure our competitiveness. So over the next couple of minutes, I will share with you some information that will address a few key questions. How is this project funded? Who pays what the debt load will look like, and is it affordable? Starting with the funding sources. And all these numbers, I just want to preface by saying, are estimates. We, as you know, are not even in a design mode yet, but we do have some numbers that we believe represent a reasonable anticipation of where the money is going to come from. You could see in the pie chart approximately 75 or 76% will come from our own debt finance sources. Other sources of funds, we're anticipating PFCs as a significant down payment of about $41 million. AIP of about $34 million, which will be towards those eligible parts of this project, mainly for the apron work. And then bill AIG funding. We will receive approximately $6.8 million per year from the FAA for bill funding. But the bit of a wild card here in this is our funding from the FAA for the ATP, which is the terminal-focused grant program. And we're going to be requesting certainly a lot more than that $12.5 million. We're looking at somewhere between a $70 and $90 million ask of the FAA. And to the extent we're successful there, that reduces the amount that we need to borrow. And in doing so, that reduces the cost not only for the airport, but for the airlines that will help pay for this. This slide answers the question of who pays what. All right. So there's a few different sources here of where the money will come from. I already spoke about PFCs. PFCs represents a significant amount of where we're going to look to pay for our debt service over the 30-year period. We're looking at terminal rents, the rents paid by airlines for the use of the terminal and the concourses. We're looking to some landing fees, not much. But a significant portion, that purple shade, 24%, is going to come from our rate base. When we roll all of that up in these two large categories of who pays what, 39% would come from airline rates and charges, and approximately 61% will come from non-airline rates and charges. We think that's a significant selling point, if you will, to the airlines. As we have discussed this project with them, this has a lower burden on the airlines. Now, these numbers are, again, our estimates, and that mix may change, potentially significantly. And I'm going to speak to some risk here in a moment. But that is our plan for today of where we think who's going to pay for what. And now the debt load question. So here is the debt service on an annual basis with some identification of where the funding is going to come from on an annual basis. Again, a significant part comes from PFCs. We will be leveraging our PFCs for here on out. So historically, we've been using PFCs for pay-go projects, escalators, road improvements, et cetera. We will, in the future, begin use PFCs, as most airports do, and that is to pay for debt. It does ramp up. These ramp up points in time coincide with when the first phase of the project is developed and when the second phase of the project. We can only charge airlines for the use of facilities that are completed, and that's the time when we pay for the debt. And this question, or this slide, helps to address the question, and I get it, it's subjective, but is it affordable? And so we look at CPE as one metric to help us get our arms around this question of affordability. And what you're seeing here is our CPE forecast with the project built out over a 30-year period, and then we bring back those estimated CPE figures to today's dollars in 2023, which was represented by the light gray bar. Where we just finished the fiscal year at $6.16. When we're fully built out, we're looking at about a $20.30 CPE in future year dollars. Current year dollars is about $16.51. And I'll help with some context of those numbers on this next slide, which some of you have seen already. This is a slide of CPEs we've collected of other medium hub airports. These airports are in different stages of their capital campaigns. Some have begun, some are in the works, and some have been completed. And just for illustration purposes, the phase one completion, we're in 2028, we're about $12.06. And when we're completely built out in phase two, we're in that $20 range. All of these bars will go off to the right as years unfold for all of these airports. One observation is that when you look at this, I think we're still a competitive good deal when we look at the other medium hub airports. So that's the intent here, just to leave you with some context as to the question of, is it affordable? So a sensitivity analysis is important in any type of large project. And this is the point where I want to touch on some risk. I think we need to go into any major decision with our eyes wide open. You know, we are dealing with numbers in a pre-design mode that are subject to change. There is pricing variability risk. The prices that we're looking at today may be something significantly different as projects are bid. The funding sources that we talked about are not all within our control to manage. We are going to be looking for decisions from the FAA to approve certain funding. We know that we have a good case to make, but let's be realistic. That decision is not within our hands. Now, we're going to be doing everything we can to increase our probability, to reduce risk by engaging our legislative delegation. We have a very good working relationship with our FAA district office, so we will have good communication all around to demonstrate our case that these projects are worthwhile and need to be done. There is, some of the economic and financial risks that we all know. There could be a recession, there are rising interest rates, and the bottom line is that we need airline approval. This is a type of expenditure where we have to meet and receive concurrence from a majority of the representation of the airlines, and so we know that we need to have a plan that they can accept. So there are other things going on, and what I'm attempting to show with this slide, it's a sensitivity analysis that our plan may change, our employment forecast may change, the cost of the project may change. So we're giving ourselves about a $50 million range below and above our $520 million estimate, and we're running the model based upon those different assumptions. We're running it against different assumptions for growth in our passenger enplanements. And all in all, when you see where we stand, our baseline CPE, when brought forward to current year's dollars, is about $15.78. It could be as high based upon some of these other variables, but we know we're still in the ballpark of what we believe is a competitive offering for this airport. Those are my comments, and I'd be happy to take any questions. I will be handing this over to CEO Griffin for the final recommendation.
Yeah, can we?
Questions on the financial
yeah,
aspect?
Trustee Safraza.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the presentation. Just a few quick questions. The PFC, and we did this before your time here, Darren, and I don't recall, I think all the mayors and the chair of the commission wrote letters to the federal delegation on increasing the PFC. Has that increased, and what's it at now?
Very good question. The attention and focus has not moved away from seeking an increase to the PFC. However, it has not occurred. It is currently at $4.50. We remain hopeful, and one way to look at it, eventually it will happen, and all we're committing to this plan is the $4.50. So anything that does come in above that in the form of a rate increase will be eligible money for other projects here at the airport.
Yeah, and that's a shame, and I think maybe we should engage again on that issue because, gosh, even if they rose it through CPI and other things, because it's such a huge on how we do, operations here at the airport, and it's not on the airlines, but if I recall correctly, I think we were getting some pushback on getting that rate increase, and
So thank you, Trustee Safraza. I couldn't agree with you more, and neither could any of my colleagues in the airport management business. The FAA reauthorization bill will come up in 2023, And this will be a center point of the airport industry, will be to try again to get the PFC increase. The airlines have consistently opposed that, and with their lobbying power, we've never been able to get it done. I want to express my appreciation to Congressman Amadei, who last year co-sponsored a bill to increase the PFC, which unfortunately didn't go anywhere again. But we're trying to get bipartisan support. It has not changed since 2001, I think, is when $4.50 was implemented. It's worth about a buck and a quarter right now, I think. And if you look at those bar charts closely enough, you can see what an impact an increase in the PFC will have on our borrowing capacity and reducing the rates for the airlines. So I'm with Randy. I think eventually we will get an increase done. We will get the airlines to at least the neutral position that on the fare increases that we've all experienced in the last 12 months, whether it's $4.50 or $6.50 is not going to impact anybody's decision on whether to take a flight or not. And that has been the basis of their argument, that it somehow affects the consumer choice. And it just has no merit, but they have a strong lobby on the Hill, and we haven't been able to get it done. But I think we will. We of course, can't model that right now. We don't. If they would just index it for inflation, it'd be worth like $7.50, and that would dramatically change this financial model. But with or without that, we still like the model.
Yeah, and just, it's a kind of double-edged sword for the airlines, because then we're looking at the pie chart and I'm like, okay, it's more on the PFC side than on their side to fund these projects so they can, come into the airport. So just a suggestion on that too, we may want to engage our construction industry and our laborers out there, because this is funding that goes to public works jobs. So I think this is an issue that we should probably actively get engaged in, because this, even more so, because that determines a huge what we can do and expand in the airport. And then the other thing, just going back to, and I'm glad you mentioned this too, Randy, and this is such a big undertaking, is the other stuff we have to do at the airport. And I think Chair Kramer, the land acquisition, and I just don't want to miss an opportunity. I can't say this enough. Just serving on different boards and commissions, if there's an opportunity to look at that, because we're a landlocked airport, of course, and so we have to be thinking about that expansion. And I know that's not directly this agenda item, but it certainly comes into place when we're looking at finances. And I just want to make sure that we're not just putting everything here. And I know, Randy, you're very conservative, which is great, because there's other stuff that has to go on. And that, to me, that's only going to get more expensive and could hamper our future growth in the long run. So those were just a couple of comments there. But that PFC, I think we've got to really re-engage in that as a community, because it's ridiculous.
I'll turn it back over to Alyssa. Thank you for the comments.
The last official slide, I just wanted to do a wrap up after you've had a chance to deep dive into the finance, circle you back to what we are hoping to recommend to you for adoption next month. And that is the final recommendation of a new build 25,000 square feet of additional concourse space, or new concourse space. That would be replacing our existing 155 square feet. So it's a significant increase, primarily on the second floor. It's going to give us the ability to increase our average 1,400 square feet hold rooms to well over 2,000 square feet each. They'll be able to flex in size, especially on those elbows that you saw on the east end to accommodate smaller and larger aircraft. We have proposed something that we believe is probably the least impactful in terms of construction phasing, not just on our passengers, because they'll be able to continue to operate in the existing concourses until they come down, but also on our airport operations and our airline operations. With the reduction in closures required in terms of the actual aircraft gates, we should be able to maintain our operations at a much higher level than any of the previous options we looked at. The concessions area is going to double, as was mentioned. We have 25,000 square feet right now in the two concourses, and we'll increase that to 50,000 square feet. Over time, one of the reasons why our hold rooms have gotten so small is because we have taken away hold room space to build more concession space. And this large increase is going to allow us to use hold rooms for what they're for. In addition, we did not show this, but the level 1 operations are going to be dramatically improved, not just from a functional standpoint with the new build, but also with the ability to add climate resiliency measures into that new construction to help us protect our operations better from future floods and other impacts that we struggle to mitigate now in our existing building. The dual taxi lane is one of the better opportunities I see that we have here to increase airline operations in that central core to allow multiple aircraft to come out at the same time and use that area. It will also increase safety by opening up the line of sight between that area where we do have active aircraft operations and the tower. Overall, the slight skinnying up that we saw, as well as the changes we've made, have actually resulted in some value engineering decisions that have been made in the planning study already to help reduce that cost. The last time we brought you the new build option, it was more expensive than the 520. It was closer to a $600 million number. But the most important thing I want to leave you with is I think we've come to a point in the planning study where we're very comfortable that what we are recommending is something that will be highly competitive in the next 4 years of airport terminal program funding grants. It's not just a project that is replacing aging infrastructure. It is increasing capacity for passengers. It's increasing capacity for the airline operations. As I mentioned, it's going to bring in those opportunities for climate resiliency, which is very important to the airport terminal program, as well as creating additional access and the ability to make it easier to move throughout that facility for our passengers. And that's where I'd like to leave us, but I'm going to toss this over to our CEO, Griffin, who has been a very strong and passionate leader of this process over the past nearly 2 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Lissa, and thank you for your leadership in this program. I want to just take a couple minutes and update the board, bless you, on some of my visits with really key partners. So starting with the airline visits, which I know you're all familiar with. Randy and Tina and I visited with Southwest, American, and United executives a few weeks ago and shared this result with them. And of course, their teams have been engaged, but those teams are not ultimately the decision makers. The decision makers reside in their headquarters facilities, and we made those visits. I want to thank Chair Kramer for joining us for the Southwest visit, obviously our #1 carrier with more than 40% of our market. And between those three, more than 65% of our customers are coming through there. We shared the result of the process. We shared the new build concept, the compare and contrast of everything we've looked at. Randy walked through the financial slides that you have seen. And without exception, they were wholly in support of this preferred alternative. And I can tell you that is the best I could have hoped for a year ago, is that we would land in a place where we feel that a great process has produced a great result and that all stakeholders involved support it. And every airport CEO wants to advance a capital program that the airlines are in support of. They sometimes are not. And in this instance, they see that it is time for a next generation of investment in infrastructure here, that pouring good money into old infrastructure is not a good ROI. And we are grateful for their engagement. They gave us some great ideas. To Damon's point, we were running scenarios we didn't plan to run because airlines asked us to, and it was worth looking at. After those meetings, which were could not have gone better, and it was a chicken and the egg kind of debate for me. Do I bring the board our preferred alternative before I share it with the airline headquarters, or do I take it to the airline headquarters first? And I opted to be able to give you the complete picture, because if I was in your seat, I would want to know what the airlines thought of this and whether they would support it publicly or not. I can tell you they will support it publicly, and they will be here to do that if that's where we land. Excuse me. The week after that, we had, through kind of just luck, the opportunity to host the airport district manager out of Phoenix, Mike Williams, who is responsible for all of Nevada and Arizona airports, and his boss, the director of airports for the Western region, Mark McClarty, and Mark basically has responsibility for all airports in the Western United States. And we walked them through this program along with lots of other talk about what we're doing here at RNO as well as STED. But we really focused on this program, this plan of finance, as Randy pointed out, our skin in the game, and what we saw in the first round of bill that helped inform our approach. We did not compete in that first round. We weren't ready, but it was very informative to see the awards that were handed out and to hear what the FAA felt of some of the airport applications that they saw. They are really looking for skin in the game. They are looking for communities that support their airport. They don't have that everywhere they go, especially in California. And so that was a point of conversation of all the support we get from Reno and Sparks and Washoe County and our whole region and all our partnerships and everybody supporting us. That actually matters to the FAA because they are deciding where to invest in aviation infrastructure. They talked to us about the San Diego program and the almost decade it's been to get to where that's at, the new Terminal 1 there, $3.4 billion, and the FAA's commitment to funding there, and they opened up some possibilities for us on federal funding that we didn't even know were there, to be honest. And while no commitments were made in a pleasant handshake conversation, I think we opened some eyes in the importance of this infrastructure. When Congress adopted the airport terminal program, we think this is exactly what they had in mind. We are remote. This infrastructure serves a very wide catchment area in northern Nevada. It's unique, one-of-a-kind infrastructure. It's been 42 years since we added or updated a gate. We are past time, quite frankly, and so there's been no resistance to this. It just takes the will to do it, and so we are very grateful for the FAA partnership. I would say in our modeling, we are being very conservative in what we might get. We think we will do potentially way better than that, but you don't build that into your baseline model. We play conservative. We shared that with the airlines. They, of course, always care about cost, but in those meetings, they immediately moved into how would you do the project? What would our involvement be? What sort of controls would the airlines have in terms of change orders and budget increases and things like that? We were not talking about whether or not we should do this project. So it is a great place to land. I'm very proud of our team, our consultant team. The 2-year effort here has been as good as I've ever seen and produced a result that I support. I think it is the vision for this region. It is time for this region to make the investment, and I think we will get broad support in places that we really need it. So, Mr. Chair, I will adjourn my comments there and see if you want to add anything to what I've said.
I do, and thank you, CEO Griffin, Lissa, Randy, Tina as well on these visits and the work that the airport team, authority team has done here to get us to this place. I will say it was very eye-opening for me to be able to join both on the Southwest visit as well as meeting with the FAA to understand the more broad support outside of just this community for what we can do with building and expanding and solving this problem. And in particular, one of the comments from the FAA is like they were thrilled to see us actually wanting to move forward in this, and that a lot of our peers in California, for instance, are trying to. There's a tension between the community and the airport, whereas the community here embraces the airport, and that's a very strong signal that I believe, at least from my interaction, should be well received as part of what we're doing here, and I think is also a credit to the work of this board, who are made up of different jurisdictions here in Northern Nevada. I think it's a really important representation and being an authority the way we are set up. I will also say meeting with our largest signatory airline, with Southwest, and their feedback and their support for this airport and what we're doing was really refreshing and encouraging, and again, indicative of the work that Darren and the team have done here. And it was fun to see them start getting excited about what we can do and how we can support them and how this is a market for growth and different opportunities. And I do, on the record, want to thank all of our signatory airline partners who have been supportive of this. Incredibly important. With that, I do have 2 questions. One, and you touched on this, can you expand a little bit more on the dual taxi lines? Because I think that's probably an underrated feature in this whole thing, going for new versus expansion or existing, and to how that's going to affect operationally. And a sub question to it is, would that have any impact on de-icing as well? Because we have dual lines, we could do that inside that area or get people out in and out more.
Just made it a much more complicated question by bringing in de-icing. So let me
Sorry.
let me address the operations perspective first. So right now, if you see existing, we have a single taxi lane right here. We have a single taxi lane here, and we have slightly larger single taxi lane on this side between the cargo operations and here. That center alley obviously has twice as much aircraft as what you have on the other side. Only one aircraft can push back or come in. Any other aircraft in this area either has to be at a gate or has to be waiting out further on the airfield to get to it. The dual taxi lane here is going to allow an aircraft on this side to be pushing back the same time an aircraft on this side is pushing back. So essentially you're doubling your potential number of operations that can happen within a certain time frame just in the alley. So not doubling overall, but just in that alley area. And we will have single taxi lanes. I'm going to look at Brent. It's single on the south and the north, correct? Yes. So we'll end up with still single on the outside. Related to de-icing, we have kind of a mismatch right now of where we de-ice. In some places, they can de-ice at the gates based on the what we have underneath the aircraft in terms of catching it, or we have to bring in vehicles to sweep up the de-icing fluid as it falls to the ground or after it falls to the ground. In other places, we do have them push back and do it. One of the things we will be able to incorporate in this work as we do it is a more centralized area, potentially in the future to the north, or better designated areas in this area here. So that is something we'll be able to solve in design and improve. We would not be able to make those changes on this existing structure.
My second question relates to international travel and the ability to potentially expand that. I know, traveling into larger airports, for international flights, they have designated exit areas for those flights to return, and CBP works with this. With this expanded terminal, will this give us any more flexibility as far as other international? I know we have the Volaris flight today, and maybe there's more. Maybe Canada comes back, something else where it becomes easier. And I'm trying to think about that.
Sure. So there was a slide right here when we talked about the airlines and their requests. And there was a little bit of consternation on the discussion related to a brand new FIS being incorporated in the building. That was a significant cost. I'm sorry, that's the customs building for where the arrivals are processed internationally. So Federal Inspection Services building. That was a pretty much a minimum $50 million price tag just on construction in order to construct a new one. What we did do is we have maintained an area that will allow us in the future, when we are ready to create a new one, to either create it in place and connect it to the brand new Charlie, or to incorporate it into the new Charlie. So we will have the ability to expand that in the future in a later project. But at this point, all this will do is allow us to have more departures on an international basis. It won't allow us to accommodate any additional arrivals beyond what we can currently accommodate.
I like the idea that the flexibility is there and not the initial piece. Other comments or Trustee Straza?
Does this change with the more aircraft? Does this change the ratio for the takeoff and landing? Are we still at, and refresh my memory, 80-20 on? I know that was a big controversy of where they take off and land. Does that change that pattern at all?
It will not change the pattern because the pattern's dependent on the direction of the wind and what's happening with the climate. It's not based on the number of aircraft.
Okay. And then just getting back to, and something you said, the community, and I think Trustee Carey had mentioned this last meeting, I think being mindful of the increase in traffic, which is a good thing, but we're an inner city airport. And I really think to start doing that groundwork as we approve these things of that sound insulation and some other things that weren't qualified before, but they're definitely have an impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. And I just knowing the FAA, I mean, going through this before, I think we want to stay ahead of the game on this, especially with the community support, and probably start going out there and looking at the surrounding neighborhoods for ways we can potentially be helpful. And I know, Trustee Carey, that was a big issue for you, and I think that we need to start doing that along with this process is that community involvement, especially the surrounding neighborhoods that are most impacted.
Comments or questions from the board? Thank you for the very conversation.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
So, one, again, thanks to the team. The goal here is to give the board members a chance to process what we presented, make sure any questions, concerns, suggestions, anything, the feedback we are looking for from each of you. And the plan right now is to bring this back as an agenda item in October for the board to adopt the preferred alternative and to authorize me to negotiate it into the airline agreement negotiation that is in progress right now. My goal here is to make this the easiest big decision you've ever made with the information that we've been sharing. But please take that time. I'll check in with each of you and make sure if there's any stone that we have not turned, that we get under that and solve for everything. And that allows this project to keep moving, get them done with their basis of design work, which is what we would then advertise a design opportunity for in 2023. So that is the plan going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll stick with you, CEO Griffin. Moving on to agenda item 9.5.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. As if you don't have enough to think about right now, we also have to review my goals and talk about goals for the next fiscal year. I think we've kind of been doing that all morning. But let me just start by...
What?
Like 5 minutes.
Yes.
Break right now?
Yes. We will adjourn for a 5-minute break. No, that's fair enough. Yeah.
I know, I kept thinking, well, I don't,
I just
kept
said
thinking, well, I don't want to get up now. Yeah.
So, sorry, I stuck out earlier, so I went. I'm the smallest one.
Thank you.
I was thinking, is it stuck? Was that the?
Oh, I know, I was like, okay. Oh, okay, I got it.
Oh, so we got going on. Isn't that? Okay, good.
Yeah, it wasn't just you.
Have you messed up anything else this week, Chris? What else have you messed up this week?
According to my wife, everything is so
That's all right.
different than the other.
Right?
So I just haven't used it.
Well, that was a nice note that the police wrote about you.
Yeah, and now I think I have to buy them lunch or something.
Yeah,
I don't know where
better.
that came
Better
from.
do something.
It was nice. Yeah.
Well, it's tomorrow's the first day back to Orange, hopefully. Walking.
Did I write that? It was like, oh, I thought she did it.
Me to s-
I was asked the route of.
Yeah, how was Florida?
Yeah, oh my gosh, it was so great. We had such.
How was that? You just missed, right? Just.
No, so.
Oh, it's spreading. Yeah.
And it's so much hurting cats. wants to. But I have a good family.
Thank you very much. Let the record show we are reconvening at 11:28 a.m. I will now continue item 9.5. CEO Griffin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 9.5 is a review of the goals set for me for FY 21-22. Not an action item, an opportunity for me to share with the board the results of those goals. And then 9.6 is the new goals that were included in your packet that will require board approval. So let me start by talking about last year. And there is a 9-page summary of the goal results, and that is the short version. So I am not going to go through each of them to save the board that, but I would like to summarize each of the goals and the results just at a very high level. So starting with number 1, which is to protect the health of airport employees and customers and lead the pandemic response. First and foremost, we managed through year 2 of COVID. And you know, having never been through anything like that before, it was a challenge for all of us. And I would say what I'm most proud of in our navigating the pandemic impacts and COVID was forming a partnership with our employee work groups and helping them lead us. There was constant discussions around employee engagement, protecting individual rights, but protecting the collective health of our workforce and our families, and striving for that balance. And that was a huge success, and I would say the biggest takeaway from me was our ability to do that and watch how other organizations handled policy matters and how could we do it in a way that was fair and equitable while also protecting our customers and our mission and our employees. From a budget standpoint, I would say we exceeded our budget targets, but that would be understating. I mean, on a revenue perspective, we obliterated every budget goal. Much of that we don't control. We didn't control when the customers were coming back and when they felt safe to travel again. But boy, did they, and there was no way we could have budgeted a revenue budget for that. But it was great to see that return and the numbers. And that was really from a budget standpoint where we get credit is on the expense side of the ledger, where in spite of a rapid return of customers, our employees did an amazing job managing expenses, and I think we came in between 3% and 4% below budget on expenses, which when you're getting a lot of unexpected traffic, that wasn't necessarily easy. We also completed the tenant and concessionaire support program for all of our tenants with board support, using our CRISA money, using some of our own funds to help out all of our terminal tenants, to recognize that the pandemic impacts went far beyond the borders for just the airport authority, but impacted every partner that we have in the airport and around the airport. And really, I'm proud of what we did there. And lastly, in that section, we paid off our debt, which just sounds so simple and easy. I wish it was simple and easy for all the rest of us. But we became a debt-free airport in the last fiscal year. And like Randy said earlier, we won't stay that way, but it's nice to enjoy that moment, but also understand as the owner of a large infrastructure thing like an airport, debt is part of the equation, and it is normal, and we will get back in that game very soon, but enjoying that moment. Number 2, build and maintain an industry-leading airport operations and public safety program. First and foremost, we performed extremely well in every inspection, test, review, analysis, whether it's from TSA or the FAA, our team stood up and just excelled in every opportunity when we're being inspected by subject matter experts or people from federal regulators. And that is the first test. We're measured by our federal regulators against the regulation and against other airports. And it's important that we always shine in those moments. And I'm incredibly proud of all of our public safety teams and operations teams that did that. We conducted a comprehensive assessment, basically A to Z of our operations and public safety mission with outside experts to see what are we missing, where are the gaps, how can we get better. And when we completed that, we immediately began implementing recommendations. We made continual investments in equipment and training and additional staffing and training really at the individual level as well as a departmental level. It's so important that departments work with each other, they train together, but that we also build the skill level for each individual member, regardless of where they're working. Also, you know, I just really want to call out that the investment in staffing that I talked about earlier is so important to recognize where we're at as an airport. We're growing. The operation has returned. This last week, we were 10% above our 2019 numbers. You know, a lot of airports cannot say that, and it's important that we recognize that and keep our eyes wide open and keep getting ready for business to return and take us to levels we haven't been at before. The parking capacity that we've added and that we are in the process of adding, we're going to need every space at some point. So lots of accomplishments in that area. Number 3, increase financial sustainability through air service and commercial development. This first and foremost, we started with a constant focus on air service, and we talked about it earlier. We have a strategic plan. You have to constantly adapt your air service strategic plan because the business is more volatile and changes faster than it ever has, quite frankly. So kudos to our team for landing new carriers, as is outlined in the report, and hanging on to those that we have. And when you lose something, immediately start working on how you get it back. Our non-aeronautical land development efforts had just an outstanding year, finally achieving key milestones, both at Toll's Home Garden and Dermody Phase 1. Both of those are finally coming to fruition. Toll's Home Garden should start construction within the next few weeks. And as the board may recall, we successfully appealed a Section 163 determination from the FAA that was not in their favor or our favor. And we think we're the only airport to actually achieve that, according to our friends at AAAE. And with Dermody, we finally, after an 18-month arduous NEPA process, got it to the finish line. And that was, I think, 7 years in the making. So they will be under construction hopefully in early 2023 as they finalize their approvals and last bit of negotiations. So it's exciting to see what's happening on the non-aeronautical land front. On the aeronautical land development, also great progress with the Stellar FBO. They are in their final stage of NEPA right now. Hope to get under construction this year, completed design, achieved their funding, executed the lease with them. And this airport so badly needs that second FBO, more hangar space, more space for our general aviation operation. And it's been, again, years and years in the making, and just a huge win for the team and for Stellar. And lastly, in this section, initiated the negotiation with the airlines on a new airline use and lease agreement. And I cannot overstate how important an airline use and lease agreement is to an airport like us. Of all the contracts we manage, it is the most important. It is the one that secures the most revenue for the airport, secures our existence. It's a commercial air carrier airport. And so we are up to our eyeballs in that right now, led by Tina, and working with our airline partners and our consultants. We are entering the home stretch now, focused on that infrastructure package that we talked about. Number 4, develop and maintain airport infrastructure to meet current and future demand. First, we completed our landside study to map out the future growth for the landside areas of the airport, something we really needed. It's a product that I'm really proud of. A great process and a great result. We have a really clear vision now in our landside areas. And that process also cemented the location of the CONRAC and moved the CONRAC and ground transportation project forward. That had been stuck. And we cannot afford for it to be stuck. As evidenced this week, our rental car capacity is well below where it needs to be. And this is finally moving again, and I'm excited for the board to see the progress on design in the workshop following the meeting today. I think you're going to like what you see. But that came from the landside study, from getting clear vision on who we're going to be. We created the More R&O program. Pull it out of thin air with great work from Brian and Stacy and the rest of the team. We created that branded element that is going to represent the construction at this airport for the rest of this decade. And you have to have that single unifying concept so that customers, when they think about airport construction, they know it's more R&O that we're talking about, and they learn the nuances of that as we share that over time. But a huge win. We then pushed infrastructure forward. as part of the More Arno program, starting with what you approved today. During this year, we completed the design of the ticket hall, and today you've approved its construction, a huge first step in that program and a huge milestone. And also, we landed on a preferred alternative for the concourse redevelopment, which sounds easy, but as you saw, it's been a long, complicated process, but is reaching a fantastic conclusion, a huge, huge win this past year. And we've also completed the first study for our space needs as an airport authority, looking at where are we going to do with our headquarters and administrative space, and what are we doing for our police department. You heard multiple references this morning about downstairs, and we need to get them upstairs, and we are working on that. We are working hard now in phase 2, and I'll talk more about that in my goal set. But first and foremost, we took that inventory and really determined that we needed to do something different. The 5th goal, lead the development of an organizational culture of high performance and inclusion. Here we started with a transition of business process systems that sounds so simple and easy, but when you're moving people off the software they've been using or from manual systems to automated online systems, there's a tremendous amount of disruption and change in an organization, tremendous amount of individual training that needs to occur, and quite frankly, it's painful, but it's necessary, and we are in a much better place now because of the board-approved investments in some of that software, and we're all individually more efficient with these platforms. Our diversity plan efforts focused on recruiting. We had a record year in recruiting. I think 80 FTE is the count of new employees into the organization, an astonishing amount of change that's been seen across society as employees left the workforce and then came back. We experienced that as well. We also really worked hard on developing our own current employees and moving them up through the organization, as well as doing a better job of engaging them and letting them help lead us, which is so important. We rolled out our first ever culture guide, which we used to call policies, procedures, and rules and regulations. And we put the focus on empowering our employees and not telling them everything they couldn't do. For the first time ever, we put intentional effort into buying local. And I'm sorry Jennifer Rose isn't here today. She was my inspiration for that. And that was a goal. We actually empowered our employees to think about buying local and using small businesses, you know, when pulling out that purchasing card and thinking about that. Now we have established a baseline and hopefully just make this part of our DNA going forward. And lastly, we negotiated new collective bargaining agreements with every work group at the airport, minus our battalion chiefs, who are a new work group, and we are close with them as well. But for everybody else, we started and got to the finish line on new collective bargaining agreements. That was a lot to do in a single year. But I'm very proud of our focus on recognizing the times we're living in, the inflationary impacts on working families. I'm especially proud of our work on the Teamsters contract, which represents the biggest section of our employee workforce, and honestly had the oldest compensation philosophy of any of the contracts, and we basically tore it up and started over with their partnership, and in 6 weeks built a brand new contract that completely reflects what it's like to be a frontline worker in an airport and surviving on wages today. So a huge credit to our organization for that. In summary, the goals really represent a tremendous amount of work across the organization from every corner, and somehow the work of every employee is reflected in these goals. And I want to express my deep gratitude to our employees. It's an honor to work with them and to work for them. And going forward, you know, I am really focused on just continuing to do everything I can from my position in the organization to make every single employee as successful as possible. And I've told them in writing and in town halls, we cannot do what we do without every single person. The number's about 280 right now, I think. I think we're budgeted up to 291 now, and we're trying to get there. It takes every single person to do what we do and to deal with the challenges that we face in a volatile world and in a growing community. And so I am grateful to every single one of them. Mr. Chair, that concludes my remarks on last year's goals. I'm happy to take any feedback, guidance, constructive criticism, whatever the board would like to give me questions. I'm happy to. Thank you.
Any comment?
Just an amazing year, and appreciate, as you said, everyone here and you for leading the charge.
Yeah, I was trying to read and catch up with you, so there's a lot in here. Trustee Jay.
Just real quick, Darren, it's been a pleasure working with you, and I only know that going forward, our future is very bright, and we're all going to probably have to don sunglasses very soon. So thank you very much for your dedication, not only to the airport, but also to the community.
And if I'd say thank you as well for agreeing to a contract extension and to staying around here while we go do some really amazing things. I think the continuity is important, not just for the authority, but for staff and for others. So excited. There's nothing else. We will move on to agenda item 9.6, review and approval of CEO performance goals and measures.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will read these. I think Lori's going to also put them on the screen, or Aaron is going to put them on the screen. I want to thank Chair Kramer and Vice Chair Jay for their guidance in these goals. There are only 3 now, so we've culled it down to our infrastructure, our people, and public safety and operating an airport. That is the business that we were in, and it's important to stay centered on those things. And so we've grouped the goals into those 3 areas. A couple things are left off as a result, but it doesn't mean we're not working on them, and I'm happy to talk about that. But I appreciated that guidance, and I completely support it. So starting with goal number 1, develop and maintain airport infrastructure to meet current and future demand. This is first and foremost, establish a multi-year plan of program finance, communication, and human capital resources. I won't read it all, you can read it, but this is operationalizing the More R&O program. It's great to talk about. It's a nice brand, looks great on the side of a van and on a wall, but it actually has to be an operating element. And we have to go get money. We have to build the team, continue building the team. We have to make decisions on projects, and we have to manage them as a holistic element, because the customer experience is one airport. They don't care about the differences between projects or funding sources or contractors. They don't care about any of that. All they care about is their experience. And so More R&O has to protect their experience. And this basically puts me on the hook for continuing to operationalize More R&O and living by it, not just having it be a nice looking brand. And to really put the charge into our government outreach to focus on paying for more R&O. As Randy outlined, there's lots of opportunities out there, and we know we are going to derive benefits, but it comes with hard work, it comes with great relationships and great outreach. So that is the first goal. Complete a phase 2 planning assessment of long-term facility options for our administrative and police departments. So this is phase 2, and phase 2 has begun. We are working with the team to identify what are the really detailed space needs for our administrative functions. We're looking in 10 to 20-year horizons, and what is the police station, the size really need to be, and we're looking at locations now, whether we're located together or separate. We need to get this work done. We're working as fast as we can, and there's a date on there of February. That is my goal, to be done with this by February, to have to the board a recommendation as part of our next budgeting process, because when we go into the next budget, we need to have design included. We need to know where we want to go. If we're going to vacate this space, we need to know that. If we're going to do it sooner rather than later. So there's a lot of answers to get to, but we have the right team pulled together. We're heavily engaged with our police leadership and members to get their feedback. Ultimately, we want their buy-in as well to where we're going. But a really important goal there, because without question, we are out of space. We're taking space and repurposing it at this point for people that we need to hire and add to the organization, and we don't have enough space for the size that we are today. Number 3, the ticketing hall expansion project. I won't dwell on this, but of course we got to build it now, and so that is an obvious goal, and preserve the customer experience, work with airport operations to make sure that there's never a bad day in there, and that people can always get where they need to get to. Fiscal responsibility. The project started at $20 million, and today it's at 32. 32 is the real number. The real number from 2.5 years ago doesn't count, but we need to hold it there. We need to manage the change orders. We need to have fiscal discipline and really work closely as a project team to make sure that this approved budget by the board is the one that we finish with as well. The concourse redevelopment, so we just did that, and now the charge for me is to push this to the design phase and get into 2023 and select a designer and ultimately then a builder and to get into design. We cannot afford to take our foot off the gas. As outlined by Damon and Brent, it's a 7-year program, and if we don't slow down, we will open that second concourse in the summer of 2029. So I can't afford to slow down, and that means right now you have to keep pushing through the administrative processes and get to that design point. So that is obviously an important infrastructure goal. Number 5, lead the effort to negotiate a 2023 airline use and lease agreement. As I noted, we're doing that already. The finish line is December, hopefully, and that will include airline agreement to a concourse preferred alternative and the financial commitment that comes with that. So again, high stakes negotiation there. The R&O master plan recommendation for air cargo, as the board knows, we are working on this. We have issued an RFP. That was an informative process for us. We know in order to relocate air cargo from the terminal area to the southwest quadrant, we are going to have to make a significant financial investment of our own. The market will not wholly do that. There is aprons, there is taxiways that have to be built. Those are our responsibility. Our team is working on that. That was part of the conversation with the FAA, that when it comes to aircraft movement areas, this is where that AIP funding and additional supplemental AIP or discretionary AIP, where can the FAA help us? Because it is in line with our master plan to relocate air cargo, and while we didn't get into it today, it's important that we do that to make that new terminal environment fully functioning. Technically, they could coexist. It is not appealing, I will tell you that, and we really do need to move them. The master plan was exactly right about that. And then lastly, the CONRAC push design to 60%. We need to complete the lease negotiation. We need to establish the final budget and obtain board approval for phase 3, which allows our partner to go to financial close and begin construction. So that will occur in this fiscal year. We need it to occur in this fiscal year so that we can have a new facility online in 2026. And if we don't meet this timeline, we won't meet that timeline. And everything is measured in years here. It takes a long time to design and build infrastructure of this magnitude. So on the infrastructure set alone, you see 7 goals. It's the longest, and it's obvious why. It's what we're doing right now. We are doing a generation worth of investment. We're catching up in some regards here, and we are playing offense in other areas. And so that is goal number 1. Goal number 2, maintain an industry-leading airport operations and public safety operation. Number 1 is something that may always be a goal as long as we have this, which is to always improve our efficiency and operational capabilities of all of our public safety and operations departments. No department operates alone. It is a team approach when it comes to public safety at an airport. It's a complicated environment, and everything has to be seamless. We are always training from the individual level to the department level. We have an emergency manager now who will be leading many of our tabletops and exercises that help the groups work together in a highly regulated environment like a commercial air carrier airfield, which is what we have here. So number 1 is one that you will probably always see on my goal set. Number 2 is the continuing work of reorganizing our ops and public safety departments and staffing up to deal with a decade worth of construction. We are not built for this, but I'm happy to report that the positions that are listed there have all been filled, and we are about to be built for it, because while it's great to talk about construction and what it's going to look like when it's done, we can't ever have a bad day because of a construction project or it's front page news. I'm on the news that night on camera trying to explain what went wrong at the airport because of a construction project. And that means our day-to-day operations team has to always be dialed into what's happening with the project and the multitude of projects and looking at it holistically. First, you have to be staffed up that way, then you have to train that way, and then they have to be plugged into each project. And in this next year, we will really be cementing those relationships, responsibilities, reporting relationships, and really making sure the day-to-day is our focus, and then we will do the projects at the same time. But you can't lose sight of the day-to-day ever. Number 3 is a new one, which is something I'm very passionate about, which is the Incident Command System, which is part of the National Incident Management System. I worked for many years to achieve staff understanding and execution of ICS at my last airport, and we have work to do here. ICS is not something that's reserved for police or fire. It is used widely in airport environments when there's a disruption to operations. Anytime the customer experience is disrupted, ICS can and should be deployed to mitigate the impact to the customer. And that can be weather, it can be power outages, it can be a legitimate emergency situation, long lines blocking a tenant. I've seen an endless amount of reasons to deploy ICS, but that takes training from the individual level all the way through departments to know when to activate it, who the incident commander is, how do reporting relationships work. And so that is a commitment we're making to really deploy that in a construction environment. It's that much more critical because we are more than likely going to be disrupted by construction unexpectedly at some time. And our frontline ops managers need to know how to activate ICS and get backup power turned on or a water leak fixed or something like that, because they will happen. Construction happens and it will disrupt the operation. There's no question about that. And then lastly, like I talked about, we are always on the hook for compliance with a myriad of federal regulations that come from different federal agencies, and we don't ever get a day off on that. And so our compliance with all federal regulations is a part of my responsibility as the CEO here, and will always be part of that goal set. Goal 3 is the development of an organizational culture of high performance and inclusion. Our diversity, equity, and inclusion plan, it's really time to take that to the next level. I think COVID slowed down a lot of that for a lot of organizations, and like I talked about, we're focused on recruiting. We really want to introduce education for all of our employees with subject matter experts to help really bolster where we're going. DEI awareness training is really important for management staff, updating our diversity plan, and then succession planning with a focus on diversity. And succession planning is future planning, right? It's who's coming in to lead the organization going forward, and how are we baking in diversity, equity, inclusion into everything that we do. The best organizations have invested in this, and it's something I certainly believe in, but it also has to be done at the right pace, has to be done with the right approach, and that we not alienate anybody in the process. That is the last thing you want to do, and I've seen that happen. So I'm excited to push this forward more. Performance management. I have been looking at our performance management system since I got here. I haven't had the bandwidth to touch it until now, and now I have the bandwidth, and we are going to take our performance management system to the next level. Performance management shouldn't be a day in the year when employees cringe and dread that they're going to get an evaluation from their boss, right? Performance management should be coaching and guiding and two-way communication and helping every employee achieve their highest level of satisfaction with their job, as well as being the best version of themselves that they can be, and we empower that. We actually have a great performance management system software with elements that haven't been turned on because we weren't ready to turn them on or use them. And so we have that ability now, and this is something we will be moving forward. It holds managers more accountable for delivering the feedback when it needs to be delivered, making sure it's two-way, that we're coaching. So I'm really excited about this because I think in many organizations, performance management is two bad words, and it shouldn't feel that way. And maybe my goal is aspirational, but we will do our best to change the complexion of that. Number 3, complete a public art master plan, including the RFQ process for recruiting art. We talked about this a couple months ago. We did begin forming the committee with all the groups that were recommended to us, and I can tell you we're getting a lot of enthusiastic yeses. People are excited about the opportunity to engage in our program of public art here at the airport. They haven't been asked before, so that's half the equation. We're going to have some amazing people on this panel that help inform me and this board as to what we should invest in, how we should do that, where the best locations are, the best concepts. And so I'm very excited about the progress there. And then lastly in this area is to the simple thing of updating our existing strategic plan, which was 2019 to 2023. The executive team and I reviewed it earlier this week. It's a tremendous document that I know months of work went into that many of you participated in. And there's a lot of good work in there that carries forward into the next strategic plan. But that was done in 2018, early 2019. A lot has changed in our world since that time, and your leadership has changed. So I do have some thoughts on what a strategic plan might look like. We'll try and balance this so that we don't reinvent any wheels, because we have plenty of work going on. But we always need the guidepost, and a lot of these goals reflect our strategic priorities as an organization. I think we can simplify our strategic plan to a degree, have it flying at the right level. Of course, we will be engaging you and our employees and our stakeholders. I hope to have a roadmap of that to you in November, and then we will get to work on that at the beginning of 23, take a few months, and get that done by the spring. I really feel we should complete it by the end of the fiscal year if at all possible. But again, it depends on how big the appetite is for an overhaul. So there's a lot to figure out there, but we will figure it out together. But I think that is a good goal for me in this fiscal year. So those are all of the goals, the 3 goals and the initiatives for this next year. I would say, in moving to this format, the only thing that doesn't show up here that you might be thinking of is budget. Listen, I'm always on the hook for the budget. It doesn't matter if you put it on my goals or not. Budget management, I think, is ingrained, and the board doesn't need to tell me that if we come in way over budget, you might frown on that. So I don't think that is much of an omission. Air service is not on here. It doesn't really fit cleanly into any of these, but I also think the board knows how invested we are across the region in air service development. And we can always talk about that anytime we need to. We will continue to provide regular updates to the board on air service, the wins and the losses, and in our partnerships with RASC and the RSCVA. So I feel like there's a lot of transparency in those areas anyways, and they did need to be called out here. I strongly agreed with the chair and the vice chair on kind of culling this down into those 3 main areas. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report on the new goals. Happy to take questions or feedback.
Trustee Cunningham.
Thank you. I'd like to compliment our chair, vice chair, and CEO Griffin. I think you've done a remarkable job capturing really the top priorities and responsibilities. Air service, I have a little heartburn about, so I just want to be assured that it is front and center and top of mind all the time, and maybe permeates all of this. The only other thought I had or suggestion was I really appreciate the diversity DEI. A lot of companies now are going to DEAI accessibility, and when you're talking about not alienating anyone in the process, I would just ask you to consider that other ingredient in the equation. But I think paring it down to 3 feels very comfortable and good, and this is very meaty and a lot there. So good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Trustee Sfraza.
Just one.
Microphone, Jessica.
I do want to make sure on the public safety one that the auto aid and mutual aid agreements are up to date. I think that's really important. I do have some heartburn, I think, from an optics standpoint too. I think we got to put air service on here. I definitely, I mean, without air service, we don't have an airport. And so I understand and appreciate the chair and vice chair going through the goals, but I think air service has got to be one of them. I feel uncomfortable not having a goal that deals with air service. So we can put it under something. And then the last comment, I appreciate the infrastructure future demands and you going through those, because I think there's going to be a few of us who aren't going to be here come July, and I think we've been having all these meetings regarding these are big decisions that we're making. So I think to have those decisions made, I think is going to be important, because you're going to have new members who don't have the background and the information of all the workshops we've been doing, especially on the Conrac and the Moreno. So I appreciate that, the heavy weighting on goal 1.
Thank you for that comment, and I agree. It's incumbent upon me, I think, to get all of that to the finish line, and that was also part of my thinking on the strategic plan, that all of you were part of the last strategic plan, so the ability to get one done before we have kind of a significant sea change in trustees would be helpful to me as the CEO. It's a lot to ask 3 brand new board members to get heavily invested in a strategic plan process when they don't know anything about the airport. They will learn it over time. So that is also why I feel a lot of pressure to get a lot of things to the June 30 finish line, but I think we can. How about if we do this? On goal number 3, part of the development of organization and culture of high performance and inclusion, the high performance part could focus on air service. And I'm happy to add that goal here. It'll be number 5 under goal number 3. If the chair and the vice chair agree with that, I hear you. I was trying to get away with it. It's not that I don't care about air service. So I'm happy to add that one there if that feels good for the board.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I appreciate the comments from the trustees. I will just add and thank you, CEO Griffin. I'm trying to just get to like 3 goals that could kind of go throughout the organization so everybody could get there. But yeah, in doing so, not trying to lose something like air service. So I appreciate the comments and this. We'll ask.
Sir, can we go on the, I heard what you said, Mr. Attorney. I think the goals from the year before regarding air service, if there's a bullet point in there, we could probably just that and put it in here. So we don't have to try.
Yeah, the process question is, are you going to craft the language now, or are you going to bring this back?
Mr. Chair, I think Trustee Safraza's suggestion is great. If we just roll forward the language for goal number 3 from last year was in the item number 1 was basically the air service goal, which was revolving around RASC, 5-year air service roadmap. I think all of that is still applicable, and if we just want to use that language, I'm comfortable with that. And next year I will report out on our continued results and efforts around air service. Otherwise, we'll have to hammer out the language separately and bring this back, I think.
Trustee Safraza or Trustee Cunningham, if you're comfortable with that, we could adopt a motion with that inclusion in there.
Yeah, actually, it's more comprehensive than I thought it would be. So, yeah, let's bring last year's verbiage and include it.
So
I'm good with that.
Yeah. Do we need to have a motion to make sure to include that in there?
Correct. When the motion is made, it needs to include the incorporation by reference from the goal 3 of last.
I move that we include the verbiage from goal 3 in fiscal year 2021 performance goals and measures, and incorporate it as goal number 5 in the fiscal year 22-23 goals and measures.
Before there's a second, would you accept an amendment that would be item 5 of goal 3?
Correct, yes.
Second.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the arm slap. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the board. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 10, board member comments, questions, and requests. I know we had some earlier, including a presentation at the next meeting about communication plan regarding construction, as well as I think we are going to have a groundbreaking type event following the next board meeting. The 2 items from Trustees Fraz I had noted, if make sure we get those on. And Trustee, if you want to add anything.
And just, we haven't had an update on the Dermody project for a while, so I'm just curious how that's going. That would be cool to bring to the board sometime. Doesn't have to be next meeting, but I get questions about that all the time. So it would just be, I know you'd mentioned it in your CEO report, but I'd like to have that sometime this year if you could.
Happy to.
Yeah, and Trustees Fraza, one thing I've asked for too is to host to have one of our board meetings out at Reno Stead, which I would love to also get a chance to walk around and see the project. I think tying these things together here, so maybe if it's not the next board meeting, maybe I've asked for a board meeting, or in the coming months out there specifically to look at this as well.
Great.
Anything you want to add? The other two on the presentation, I think we're all good. I just want to make sure.
No, I think we're good, and we will send details to the board members on the More R&O groundbreaking event, which will follow the October board meeting. Your adoption of a preferred alternative is a milestone, along with the groundbreaking on the ticket hall, and our team is still trying to figure out how to do those things together, and we may nuance that, but it will be a big celebration. Elected leaders at every level will be invited, and we hope to have some here depending on Congress and things like that. We will also have executive level representation from Southwest Airlines and maybe American. So it's going to be a big day. We're excited, looking forward to it. We'll get you all those details. I intend to keep the agenda pretty short so we can focus on these big milestones and get to the event. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else from any of the other members? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 11, upcoming RTA meetings. Any comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, moving on to public comment. Is there any public comment at this time?
No public comment.
Thank you. We will adjourn the regular board meeting, and then we have a workshop on CONRAC immediately following. Thank you.
Yes. So, Lori, do you want to explain lunch for the board? Yeah.
We've got lunch for the board members staged in the executive conference room, so we can pick it up there, and you can bring it back to the AB conference room, and then we'll convene for the